Unpredictable reactions can make people chase harder. Unpredictable reactions create an emotional puzzle that the mind feels compelled to solve. When someone cannot tell whether you will be warm, distant, amused, or indifferent, their attention becomes sharper. They start studying your messages, pauses, facial expressions, and changes in tone, searching for clues about what you truly feel. The reason this works is uncertainty. The brain dislikes unfinished patterns, especially in dating. Consistent affection feels safe, but inconsistent reactions create tension. A warm conversation followed by silence can make someone wonder what changed. Instead of stepping back, they may invest more effort trying to recover the version of you that once made them feel chosen. This does not always mean the connection is deep. Sometimes the person is chasing relief from confusion rather than genuine closeness. Every positive reaction feels like a reward, while every cold response creates fear that the reward is disappearing. That contrast can make your attention feel far more valuable than it really is. People with abandonment wounds or low self-worth may be especially vulnerable to this pattern. They can interpret your unpredictability as a challenge to prove themselves worthy of consistent affection. They may text more often, replay conversations, or become desperate for reassurance. This dynamic becomes dangerous when mixed signals are used deliberately. One person gains control by giving attention, then taking it away. The other keeps chasing, not because the relationship is healthy, but because uncertainty has turned affection into something they feel they must earn. Over time, they may mistake emotional instability for passion, believing the intensity proves something meaningful, even while the pattern quietly weakens their confidence and peace inside. Inconsistent attention can create stronger attachment. Inconsistent attention can make a person feel more attached because the brain starts treating affection like an uncertain reward. When warmth appears without warning and then disappears, the mind does not relax. It becomes alert, watchful, and increasingly focused on when the next moment of closeness will return. This pattern is powerful because unpredictable rewards can hold attention more strongly than consistent ones. A kind message, affectionate call, or sudden burst of interest creates emotional relief. When that attention fades, the person may feel anxious, confused, or rejected. Instead of losing interest, they often try harder to bring the connection back to its previous warmth. The attachment can grow even when the relationship itself is unstable. The person may begin checking their phone constantly, replaying conversations, and analyzing every delay. Small signs of affection feel unusually meaningful because they arrive after uncertainty. What should feel ordinary starts feeling rare, and rarity increases emotional value. People who already fear abandonment may become especially vulnerable. They may believe that being more patient, more attractive, or more understanding will finally earn consistent care. This turns the relationship into a cycle of hope and disappointment, where each return of attention feels like proof that the bond is real. The darker truth is that the person may not be attached only to you. They may be attached to the relief your attention provides after emotional distance. The contrast between closeness and withdrawal creates intensity, and intensity can be mistaken for love. Over time, they may chase not because they feel secure, but because they are trying to escape the anxiety your absence creates inside their unsettled mind. Unfinished emotions keep people returning. Unfinished emotions create a powerful psychological pull because the mind struggles to release what never reached a clear ending. When a connection stops suddenly, without explanation, closure, or emotional resolution, the person left behind often keeps returning mentally and physically, hoping to complete what still feels open. The brain naturally searches for patterns and answers. A relationship that ends clearly can be painful, but at least the mind knows what happened. An unfinished connection is different. It leaves behind unanswered questions, imagined possibilities, and conversations that never took place. The person may replay old moments, examine every message, and wonder whether one different choice could have changed everything. This emotional tension can make the connection feel more important than it actually was. Because there was no final answer, the mind keeps filling the silence with fantasy. It remembers the best moments, softens the painful ones, and creates an idealized version of what the relationship might have become. The absence of closure allows hope to survive long after reality has changed. Some people return because they genuinely miss you. Others return because they cannot tolerate the feeling of being emotionally unfinished. A simple message, unexpected call, or casual appearance can be their attempt to test whether the door is still open. They may not even want a healthy relationship. They may only want relief from uncertainty. This is why vague endings, unanswered messages, and unresolved tension can keep someone attached for months or years. The person is not always chasing love. Sometimes they are chasing an ending their mind can accept, because without one, the emotional story continues repeating itself inside them, even when they desperately want peace again. Anxiety is often mistaken for attraction. Anxiety can feel remarkably similar to attraction because both place the body in a heightened emotional state. Your heart beats faster, your thoughts become harder to control, and your attention keeps returning to one person because the sensations feel intense. The mind may label them as chemistry, even when they are actually signs of uncertainty, fear, or emotional insecurity. This confusion often appears when someone is difficult to read. Delayed replies, mixed signals, sudden distance, or unpredictable affection can make every interaction feel important. The person begins waiting for messages, analyzing tone, and wondering whether they have done something wrong. That constant mental focus can create the illusion of deep desire. The body also plays a powerful role. Anxiety activates alertness, making encounters feel charged and unforgettable. A calm, secure connection may seem less exciting by comparison because it does not produce the same emotional rush. This is why some people repeatedly choose relationships that keep them nervous, then mistake the instability for passion. Past experiences can strengthen the pattern. Someone raised around inconsistent affection may associate uncertainty with love. When another person makes them feel uneasy, they may experience the discomfort as familiar and therefore meaningful. Their nervous system recognizes the pattern before their conscious mind understands it. The darker truth is that obsession can grow from fear rather than compatibility. The person may not be drawn to who you truly are. They may be reacting to the possibility of rejection, abandonment, or losing control. What feels like irresistible attraction may actually be the mind struggling to find safety in someone who repeatedly makes emotional security feel deeply uncertain and unstable. Uncertainty can make your approval feel valuable. Uncertainty can make your approval feel valuable because people often desire reassurance most when they are unsure they will receive it. When someone cannot predict whether you admire them, accept them, or feel interested, your reactions begin carrying more emotional weight than they normally would. A simple compliment can suddenly feel powerful. A warm reply can seem like proof that they are getting closer. Even small signs of attention may become important because they arrive after doubt. The less certain someone feels about your opinion, the more closely they may watch your tone, timing, expressions, and enthusiasm. This happens because the mind values what feels scarce or difficult to obtain. Approval that is freely and consistently given feels comforting, but approval that appears selective can feel like something that must be earned. The person may begin adjusting their behavior, appearance, or communication style in hopes of receiving a positive response. Over time, they may stop asking whether the connection is healthy and start focusing only on whether they can win your validation. Your approval becomes tied to their confidence. When you respond warmly, they feel relieved. When you become distant, they may feel inadequate, rejected, or determined to try harder. The darker side of this pattern is that uncertainty can create emotional dependence. Someone may begin chasing your praise not because they truly value the relationship, but because your approval temporarily quiets their insecurity. What feels like attraction may actually be a desperate need to feel worthy in your eyes. The more unpredictable your validation becomes, the more powerful it can feel, especially to someone whose self-worth depends on how others respond. People chase when they cannot define their place. People often chase harder when they cannot clearly understand where they stand in someone's life. When affection feels real but commitment remains uncertain, the mind becomes restless. It starts searching for answers in every message, pause, invitation, and change in tone. The lack of definition keeps attention locked on the connection. This happens because emotional uncertainty creates an unfinished question. Are they important, temporary, desired, or replaceable? Without a clear answer, the person may invest more effort to secure a position that has never been openly promised. They may become more available, more patient, or more willing to tolerate behavior they would normally reject. Small signs of closeness begin to feel like evidence. A late-night call can feel intimate. A jealous reaction can look like hidden commitment. A sudden affectionate message may convince them that the relationship is finally becoming serious. Yet when distance returns, the uncertainty becomes even stronger. The person may not be chasing love alone. They may be chasing clarity, status, and the comfort of knowing they matter. Being undefined can feel emotionally threatening because it leaves them vulnerable to rejection without giving them the security of belonging. The darker side appears when someone deliberately keeps the relationship vague. They offer enough warmth to maintain hope, but avoid giving a clear answer. This can make the other person work harder for recognition, believing that greater effort will eventually earn a secure place. Over time, the chase becomes less about genuine compatibility and more about escaping the painful feeling of being emotionally important one moment and completely uncertain the next, with no lasting reassurance or peace at all. Losing your attention can feel like losing status. Losing your attention can feel like losing status because attention is not experienced as neutral. When someone once felt chosen, admired, or prioritized by you, your interest may have become part of how they measured their value. The moment that attention fades, they may not only miss you, they may feel reduced. This is especially powerful when other people can see the change. If you once responded quickly, showed affection openly, or made them feel important, your withdrawal can feel like a public demotion. They may start wondering whether someone else has replaced them, whether they are less desirable, or whether they have fallen beneath your standards. The mind often links attention with social rank. Being noticed by someone attractive, respected, or emotionally selective can create a sense of importance. Losing that attention may therefore feel like losing proof that they mattered. This can trigger jealousy, competition, and an urge to regain your focus. They may begin posting more, dressing differently, becoming more available, or trying to provoke a reaction. These actions are not always about love. Sometimes, they are attempts to restore the identity they had when your attention made them feel significant. The darker side is that people may chase you even when they do not want a healthy relationship. They may only want to know they can still affect you. Your attention becomes a symbol of power, desirability, and control. Once it disappears, the chase may intensify because they are no longer fighting only for your affection. They are fighting against the painful belief that losing your interest means they have lost importance, influence, and emotional status in your eyes. Withdrawn affection often increases desire. Withdrawn affection often increases desire because the mind notices absence more sharply than consistency. When warmth, attention, or tenderness suddenly disappears, the person left behind may begin valuing it more than they did while it was freely available. What once felt ordinary starts feeling rare, and rarity creates emotional urgency. This reaction is connected to loss aversion. People often feel the pain of losing something more strongly than the pleasure of having it. When affection is withdrawn, the mind becomes focused on recovering what has vanished. The person may replay conversations, study recent changes, and search for the exact moment the emotional distance began. The withdrawal can also create idealization. Instead of remembering the full relationship, they may focus on the best moments, the reassurance, closeness, and excitement they no longer receive. The missing affection becomes emotionally polished, appearing more meaningful because it is no longer accessible. Some people respond by chasing harder. They send more messages, offer more attention, or change their behavior in hopes of restoring the connection. Each small return of warmth feels powerful because it temporarily ends the discomfort created by distance. The darker side appears when affection is deliberately removed to control someone. Giving warmth, then withholding it, can create dependence by making the other person work for emotional relief. They may believe they are fighting for love when they are actually reacting to deprivation. Desire grows not because the connection has become healthier, but because withdrawal has transformed affection into a scarce reward. Their mind now fears losing completely. This cycle can feel deeply intoxicating, trapping them between hope and rejection, while slowly teaching them to confuse emotional hunger with genuine romantic devotion. Tension, followed by relief, can create attachment. Tension followed by relief can create attachment because the nervous system remembers emotional contrast more intensely than calm consistency. When someone makes you feel uncertain, distant, or afraid of losing them, your body enters a state of alertness. Then, when they suddenly return with affection, reassurance, or warmth, the relief can feel almost euphoric. That emotional shift is powerful. The person may begin associating you not only with the tension, but also with the comfort that ends it. This creates a confusing bond in which the same person becomes both the source of distress and the source of relief. Instead of recognizing the pattern as unhealthy, they may interpret the emotional intensity as proof of a deep connection. The cycle often begins subtly. A delayed response creates worry. A cold interaction triggers doubt. Then a loving message arrives, and the anxiety disappears. That relief rewards the person for staying emotionally invested, making them more likely to tolerate the next period of distance. Over time, they may start craving reconciliation more than genuine closeness. Arguments, withdrawal, and emotional silence become followed by powerful moments of reunion. The highs feel stronger because the lows came first. Even brief affection can then feel precious because it arrives after fear has made the person emotionally hungry and desperate for reassurance. The darker side is that this pattern can be used deliberately. Someone may create tension, pull away, and then return with affection to deepen dependence. The person being affected may chase harder, believing they are protecting love when they are actually seeking relief from emotional pain. Their attachment grows around the cycle itself, making peace feel unfamiliar and instability feel strangely meaningful. Some chase you to repair, old rejection. Some people chase you because winning your affection feels like a chance to repair an old wound. You may remind them of someone who once ignored, abandoned, criticized, or rejected them. Without realizing it, they begin treating the new connection as an opportunity to rewrite the painful ending they never emotionally accepted. This is why their pursuit can feel unusually intense. They are not only responding to who you are, they are reacting to what your approval represents. If they can make you choose them, desire them, or stay, it may feel like proof that they were never truly unworthy. Old rejection often creates unfinished emotional business. A person may carry the belief that they were not attractive enough, lovable enough, or important enough. When someone with similar traits enters their life, the old wound becomes active again. The chase then becomes a private mission to defeat the same feeling of inadequacy. They may tolerate mixed signals, distance, or emotional coldness because walking away feels like repeating the original loss. Each setback makes them try harder. Each small sign of affection gives them hope that this time the story will end differently. The darker truth is that their attachment may be aimed at healing the past, not building something healthy in the present. They may idealize you, ignore incompatibility, and mistake emotional familiarity for destiny. Even after receiving your attention, they may remain restless because no new relationship can completely repair an old rejection that was never faced honestly. What they are chasing is not only your affection, but the feeling that finally being chosen will erase the pain of once being left behind. Emotional mystery invites idealized projections. Emotional mystery invites idealized projections because people naturally fill missing information with imagination. When you reveal little about what you feel, want, or fear, the other person begins creating explanations. Instead of seeing you clearly, they may build a version of you that matches their deepest hopes. This happens because uncertainty leaves space for fantasy. A quiet personality can be interpreted as depth. Emotional distance can look like hidden sensitivity. Limited communication may seem mysterious rather than unavailable. The less someone knows, the easier it becomes for them to imagine qualities that may not truly exist. The mind often prefers an idealized story over an incomplete reality. If someone is already attracted to you, they may assign meaning to ordinary actions. A brief smile becomes secret interest. A delayed message becomes emotional conflict. A private nature becomes proof that you possess a rich inner world waiting to be discovered. This projection can make attraction grow rapidly. The person is not only responding to your actual behavior, they are falling for the personality, intentions, and future they have created around you. Because the imagined version fits their emotional needs so perfectly, reality may struggle to compete. The darker side is that emotional mystery can be used to encourage obsession. By remaining vague, revealing selective details, and avoiding clear answers, someone can allow another person's fantasy to deepen. The person may chase harder because they believe there is something extraordinary hidden beneath the surface. What they desire may not truly be you. They may be pursuing a reflection of their own needs, loneliness, and romantic expectations. The mystery keeps the illusion alive because there is never enough truth to destroy the perfect image their mind has carefully created. Hope mixed with insecurity can intensify desire. Hope mixed with insecurity can intensify desire because the mind becomes trapped between possibility and fear. One moment, the person believes the connection could become something meaningful. The next, they worry they are about to lose it. That emotional swing keeps their attention fixed on you. Hope tells them to stay. Insecurity tells them they are not safe. Together, these feelings create a powerful cycle of anticipation, doubt, and emotional investment. A warm message may convince them that progress is being made, while a delayed reply can make them question everything. Because the outcome feels uncertain, every small interaction begins carrying unusual weight. This pattern can make desire feel deeper than it really is. The person may think constantly about what you meant, what you feel, and whether they are enough. They start measuring their worth through your reactions. When you show interest, they feel relieved and wanted. When you become distant, they feel threatened and more determined to regain closeness. People with abandonment fears are especially vulnerable. They may cling to hope because it protects them from accepting rejection, while insecurity pushes them to work harder for reassurance. They may become more available, more patient, or more forgiving than the situation deserves. The darker side is that hope can keep someone attached to almost nothing. A few affectionate moments may be enough to sustain a fantasy, even when most of the connection creates confusion. They are not only chasing love, they are chasing the possibility that their insecurity will finally disappear if you choose them, stay consistent, and prove that their fear of being unwanted had been wrong all along. Lack of closure keeps people attached. Lack of closure keeps people attached because the mind struggles to release a story that feels unfinished. When a connection ends without a clear explanation, honest conversation, or final emotional answer, the person left behind often keeps searching for meaning long after the relationship has stopped. The brain naturally wants complete patterns. A painful truth can eventually be accepted, but uncertainty remains mentally active. The person may replay conversations, examine old messages, and question whether they misunderstood something important. Every unanswered question becomes another reason to keep thinking about you. This is why silence can create stronger attachment than a clear goodbye. Without closure, hope survives. The person may believe there is still a chance, hidden feeling, or explanation that could change everything. Even a small message can restart the emotional cycle because the ending was never firmly established. Lack of closure can also lead to idealization. When the truth is missing, the mind fills the space with fantasy. The person may remember the best moments and minimize the painful ones. They may become attached not only to what happened, but to what they believe could still happen. The darker side is that vague endings can be used to maintain emotional control. Someone may disappear, return briefly, and avoid defining the relationship. This keeps the other person emotionally available without offering commitment. The attachment continues because the person is not only grieving the connection, they are waiting for an answer that may never come. Their mind remains caught between acceptance and possibility, unable to fully move forward because part of them still believes one final conversation could make the entire experience understandable. Distance can trigger abandonment fears. Distance can trigger abandonment fears because emotional space is rarely experienced as neutral by someone who has been left, ignored, or replaced before. A slower reply, colder tone, or sudden reduction in affection can awaken old panic before the person understands what is happening. The mind begins searching for danger. They may wonder whether you are losing interest, talking to someone else, or preparing to disappear. Even without proof, uncertainty can make the fear feel real. Their body reacts first, creating tension, restlessness, and an urgent need for reassurance. This is why distance can increase pursuit. The person may text more, become unusually available, or try harder to please you. They are not always chasing because the connection has become stronger. Sometimes, they are trying to prevent an old wound from repeating itself. People with abandonment fears often interpret small changes as signs of rejection. A quiet evening can feel like emotional withdrawal. A postponed plan can seem like replacement. Because their nervous system expects loss, They may respond to ordinary distance as though the relationship is already slipping away. The darker side appears when someone deliberately creates distance to provoke chasing. By withdrawing warmth, delaying responses, or becoming emotionally unavailable, they can make the other person feel responsible for restoring closeness. The fear of being left then becomes a powerful source of control. What looks like intense attraction may actually be panic wearing the face of devotion. The person may cling, overgive, or ignore boundaries because they are not only afraid of losing you, they are afraid that your distance confirms the painful belief that everyone they love eventually decides to leave. People may chase warmth they once received freely. People may chase warmth they once received freely because the mind notices emotional loss more intensely than steady affection. When kindness, attention, and closeness were once easy to access, their sudden disappearance can create a powerful sense of deprivation. What felt ordinary begins to feel precious only after it is gone. This shift happens because people often adapt to consistent affection. They stop noticing every caring message, gentle gesture, or reassuring word. But when that warmth is withdrawn, the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. The person may begin replaying earlier moments, remembering how safe, wanted, or important they once felt around you. The chase often begins as an attempt to restore that emotional comfort. They may become more attentive, more agreeable, or more available, hoping their effort will bring back the version of you who once seemed open and affectionate. Each small return of warmth can feel deeply rewarding because it temporarily ends the emotional hunger created by your distance. This does not always mean their feelings have grown healthier or deeper. Sometimes they are attached to the memory of how your affection made them feel. They may be chasing reassurance, familiarity, and relief rather than a balanced relationship. The darker side appears when warmth is withdrawn deliberately to create dependence. Someone can offer closeness, remove it, then give it back in small amounts. This teaches the other person to work for what was once freely available. Over time, they may accept less, try harder, and confuse emotional deprivation with love, believing that if they become worthy enough, the tenderness they remember will finally return and stay for good someday. Your ability to leave can increase attraction. Your ability to leave can increase attraction because independence changes how people perceive your value. When someone senses that you will not tolerate confusion, disrespect, or emotional neglect just to keep them, your presence begins to feel more deliberate. You are not staying from fear. You are staying because you choose to. That choice creates psychological weight. People often value what cannot be controlled easily, and someone who is willing to walk away appears less dependent on approval. Your attention feels more meaningful because it is not guaranteed. Every moment you remain seems intentional rather than desperate. This can make others become more attentive. They may listen more carefully, respect your boundaries, or invest more effort because they understand that careless behavior has real emotional consequences. The possibility of losing access to you makes your presence feel less ordinary. Your ability to leave can also create mystery. A person may wonder how deeply you care, what standards you hold, and whether they are doing enough to remain part of your life. That uncertainty can increase desire, especially in people who are used to others chasing them. The darker side appears when someone becomes attracted mainly because they cannot control you. They may chase harder, not from love, but from the need to prove they can make you stay. Your independence becomes a challenge to their ego. This is why emotional freedom can feel magnetic. It shows that you are capable of connection without surrendering your dignity. Yet it also reveals who truly values you and who only becomes interested when they fear losing power, access, or influence over your choices. Obsession often grows from uncertainty, not compatibility. Obsession often grows from uncertainty because the mind becomes more focused on what it cannot clearly understand or secure. When someone gives mixed signals, avoids direct answers, or shifts between closeness and distance, the connection can begin to occupy more mental space than a stable relationship ever would. The person may think about every message, silence, glance, and change in tone. They search for hidden meaning because uncertainty keeps the emotional story unfinished. Instead of asking whether the relationship is healthy, they become consumed with discovering what the other person truly feels. This is why obsession can be mistaken for compatibility. Constant thinking feels like deep connection. Emotional intensity feels like chemistry. The urge to gain clarity feels like love. Yet the person may be responding less to who you are and more to the anxiety created by not knowing where they stand. Uncertainty also encourages idealization. When facts are missing, the mind fills the gaps with hope, fantasy, and imagined potential. The person may create a version of you that perfectly matches what they want, while ignoring behavior that reveals incompatibility. The darker side is that someone can become deeply attached without truly knowing you. They may chase harder, tolerate inconsistency, and overlook clear warning signs because every small moment of warmth feels like progress. Their obsession is sustained by the possibility of finally receiving certainty. What appears to be powerful attraction may actually be the mind trying to solve an emotional puzzle. Real compatibility usually creates understanding and safety, while obsession feeds on confusion, distance, and the fear that one wrong move could make the entire connection disappear forever. Winning you can feel like proving their worth. Winning you can feel like proving their worth because some people do not separate romantic success from personal value. When your attention seems difficult to earn, being chosen by you can become more than affection. It becomes evidence that they are attractive, important, and finally good enough. This often begins with insecurity. The person may carry old rejection, comparison, or criticism that left them doubting themselves. Instead of healing that wound directly, they focus on gaining approval from someone who appears selective, distant, or emotionally powerful. Your interest begins to feel like a verdict on their worth. The harder you are to secure, the more meaningful success may seem. Every reply feels like progress. Every compliment feels like confirmation. Every moment of closeness becomes proof that they are winning. This can make them invest far more energy than the actual connection deserves. They may overlook incompatibility because the goal is no longer simply to know you. The goal is to be chosen by you. Rejection would not only mean losing the relationship, it would seem to confirm their deepest fear that they are not enough. The darker side is that the chase can continue even without genuine love. Some people pursue because they need victory, validation, or the satisfaction of changing your mind. Once they receive your affection, their interest may weaken because the emotional mission has been completed. What looked like devotion may have been a struggle against private shame. They were not only chasing you, they were chasing the feeling that your approval could erase every person, moment, and painful memory that once made them question their value. Emotional intensity is often confused with depth. Emotional intensity is often confused with depth because powerful feelings can make a connection seem more meaningful than it truly is. When conversations feel urgent, attraction feels overwhelming, and every interaction creates a strong emotional reaction. People may assume they have found something rare. The mind often mistakes stimulation for significance. Rapid closeness, dramatic arguments, passionate reunions, and constant uncertainty can create a relationship that feels impossible to ignore. Because the emotions are strong, the person may believe the bond must also be strong. This confusion becomes more powerful when the connection moves quickly. Sharing personal secrets, speaking for hours, or making emotional promises can create the illusion of intimacy before trust has had time to develop. The person feels deeply seen, yet they may barely understand the other person's values, habits, or emotional stability. Intensity can also grow from fear. Jealousy, withdrawal, mixed signals, and the threat of loss keep the nervous system activated. That tension can feel like passion, even when it is actually anxiety. Calm relationships may then seem dull because they do not produce the same emotional rush. The darker side is that intensity can hide incompatibility. People may excuse disrespect, inconsistency, or manipulation because the connection feels powerful. They tell themselves that something this emotional must be special. Real depth is usually built through honesty, safety, patience, and consistent care. Intensity can appear overnight, but depth requires time. When someone confuses the two, they may become attached to emotional chaos while believing they have discovered a love too profound to leave. This is why storms can feel unforgettable, even when they never create understanding or security. Silence feels powerful when reassurance is expected. Silence feels powerful when reassurance is expected because absence becomes louder than words. When someone is used to receiving quick replies, explanations, affection, or emotional comfort, your sudden quietness creates a space their mind rushes to fill. Instead of feeling neutral, the silence can feel like judgment, rejection, or hidden anger. The brain dislikes uncertainty, especially when it expects relief. A delayed response may make the person reread messages, question their behavior, and search for the moment they might have changed your mood. The longer the silence continues, the more meaning they may attach to it. This is why silence can increase emotional pursuit. The person may send another message, apologize without knowing what they did, or become unusually attentive. They are not always chasing because their feelings have deepened. Sometimes they are trying to end the discomfort created by not knowing what your silence means. Silence becomes especially powerful when reassurance was previously consistent. If you once explained everything, responded warmly, or quickly calmed their fears, your withdrawal creates a sharp emotional contrast. What they once received freely now feels uncertain and difficult to recover. The darker side appears when silence is used deliberately as punishment or control. Someone may withdraw communication to make another person anxious, obedient, or desperate for reconnection. The person being ignored may begin accepting blame, lowering boundaries, or working harder simply to restore contact. What looks like increased attraction may actually be emotional distress. The silence has not created deeper compatibility. It has created an unanswered threat, and the person may chase reassurance because uncertainty feels more painful than the relationship itself, especially when abandonment fears are already waiting beneath the surface. Unclear intentions can fuel obsession. Unclear intentions can fuel obsession because the human mind naturally tries to solve what it cannot understand. When someone never clearly reveals whether they want commitment, friendship, or something temporary, the uncertainty keeps the emotional story open. Instead of moving forward, the other person becomes trapped, trying to figure out what everything means. Every interaction begins to feel significant. A warm message suggests hope. A cold response creates doubt. A compliment feels like hidden affection, while emotional distance raises new questions. Because nothing is clearly defined, the mind keeps searching for patterns that may not even exist. This uncertainty can slowly become an obsession. The person starts replaying conversations, analyzing body language, and reading between every line. They convince themselves that one more conversation, one more date, or one more message will finally reveal the truth. The search for clarity becomes more important than the relationship itself. People often mistake this constant mental focus for deep attraction. They believe they cannot stop thinking about you because the connection is extraordinary. In reality, they may be reacting to unresolved uncertainty. The brain stays emotionally engaged because it has not received a clear answer. The darker side is that some people intentionally keep their intentions vague. They give enough affection to maintain hope while avoiding the honesty that would allow the other person to make informed choices. This keeps emotional investment alive without requiring commitment. What appears to be irresistible chemistry may actually be a mind trapped inside an unanswered question. The obsession grows because certainty never arrives. As long as hope and confusion exist together, the person keeps chasing a future they cannot define, believing the next interaction will finally reveal the truth they have been waiting to hear. Your attention may temporarily quiet their insecurity. Your attention may temporarily quiet their insecurity because feeling noticed by someone they value can briefly silence the doubts they carry about themselves. A simple message, compliment, or moment of genuine interest can make them feel accepted, important, and emotionally safe. For a while, the inner voice questioning their worth becomes much quieter. This happens because external validation can provide immediate emotional relief. If someone already struggles with self-esteem, your attention becomes more than simple affection. It starts feeling like proof that they are attractive, interesting, or deserving of love. The more meaningful your opinion becomes, the more powerful your attention feels. Over time, they may begin depending on your reactions to regulate their emotions. A warm reply lifts their confidence. A delayed message creates doubt. A caring gesture makes them feel secure, while emotional distance causes old insecurities to return. Their emotional state begins rising and falling with the amount of attention they receive from you. This can create a powerful attachment. They may check their phone constantly, overanalyze your words, or seek frequent reassurance. They are not only hoping for connection, they are trying to maintain the temporary sense of confidence your attention gives them. The darker side appears when someone recognizes this dependence and uses it for control. By giving attention, withdrawing it, and then offering it again, they can make the other person work harder for emotional relief. Instead of building healthy confidence from within, the person starts chasing another moment of validation. What feels like deep love may actually be a search for emotional stability. Your attention becomes a temporary escape from insecurity, making the relationship feel essential because it provides something they struggle to give themselves, lasting reassurance that they are enough. Scarce affection often feels more valuable. Scarce affection often feels more valuable because people naturally place greater importance on what seems limited or difficult to obtain. When warmth, attention, or emotional closeness is always available, it can become familiar. But when affection is rare, every small moment of kindness begins to feel unusually meaningful. The mind is wired to notice scarcity. A single compliment from someone emotionally distant may feel more powerful than many compliments from someone consistently loving. A rare display of affection can stay in a person's memory for days because it feels special, unexpected, and uncertain. This is why some people become deeply attached to relationships that provide very little emotional consistency. They begin waiting for the next kind message, affectionate gesture, or moment of closeness. Each small sign of warmth feels like a reward after a long period of emotional uncertainty, making it seem far more valuable than it actually is. Over time, the person may confuse scarcity with significance. They believe the affection must be genuine because it feels so meaningful when it finally arrives. In reality, its emotional impact is often increased simply because it is uncommon, not because the relationship is healthier or deeper. The darker side appears when someone intentionally limits affection to maintain control. By giving warmth only occasionally, they can make the other person crave every small expression of care. The relationship slowly shifts from mutual connection to emotional dependence. What seems like extraordinary love may simply be ordinary affection delivered in very small amounts. The person keeps chasing because every rare moment of closeness feels precious. Instead of asking whether they are receiving enough love, they become grateful for whatever little they are given, believing scarcity is proof of value rather than a warning sign of emotional imbalance. People may chase how they feel around you. People may chase how they feel around you because emotions often leave a stronger impression than facts. Long after they forget specific conversations or details, they may still remember how your presence made them feel. If you made them feel confident, understood, admired, or alive, those emotions can become deeply associated with you. The human mind remembers emotional experiences more vividly than ordinary interactions. Someone who feels accepted around you may begin craving that feeling without fully realizing it. They believe they are chasing you, but what they truly miss is the version of themselves that seemed to exist in your presence. This is why two people can experience the same relationship very differently. One remembers the conversations, while the other remembers the emotional atmosphere. If your attention made them feel attractive, important, or emotionally safe, your absence can leave behind a powerful emotional void that they want to fill again. The effect becomes even stronger during difficult periods in their life. If they associate you with happiness, peace, or confidence, returning to you can feel like returning to the emotions they have been unable to create on their own. The person may mistake emotional comfort for proof that you are uniquely meant for them. The darker side is that people can become attached to the emotional experience rather than the actual relationship. They may ignore incompatibility, repeated disappointment, or unhealthy patterns because they are chasing the memory of how you once made them feel. What appears to be deep love may actually be a longing to experience those emotions again. Sometimes, they are not pursuing the real you at all. They are pursuing the person they became whenever they were with you, believing only you can make them feel that way again. Emotional value rises when access feels limited. Emotional value rises when access feels limited because people naturally appreciate what they believe they might lose. When someone is always available, their presence can begin to feel predictable. But when access becomes selective, every conversation, meeting, or moment of attention can suddenly feel far more meaningful. The mind is strongly influenced by perceived scarcity. If your time, affection, or emotional energy is not easily available, people may assume it has greater value. They begin paying closer attention to your words, looking forward to your messages and treating your attention as something that must be earned rather than expected. This change can increase emotional investment. A person may start putting more effort into conversations, becoming more thoughtful, or seeking opportunities to stay connected. The possibility of losing access makes them appreciate your presence in ways they may not have before. Limited access also creates anticipation. Instead of constant interaction, each meeting becomes an event the mind looks forward to. That anticipation can make emotions feel stronger because waiting often increases perceived importance. The person begins imagining future conversations long before they happen, making the connection occupy more space in their thoughts. The darker side appears when limited access is created deliberately to control emotions. Someone may become distant, unavailable, or inconsistent simply to make another person chase them. This can create emotional dependence by making ordinary attention feel like a reward. What feels like extraordinary attraction may actually be a reaction to restricted availability. The person is not always responding to who you are. Sometimes they are responding to the fear that they may not get another chance. When access feels uncertain, the heart often assigns greater value to what it believes could disappear at any moment. Perceived competition can increase pursuit. Perceived competition can increase pursuit because people often value something more when they believe others want it too. The moment someone thinks they are not the only person interested in you, your emotional value can rise in their mind. What once seemed ordinary suddenly feels rare, desirable, and worth protecting. This reaction is rooted in social psychology. People frequently use the choices of others as a shortcut for judging value. If several people appear attracted to you, the mind may assume there must be something exceptional about you. Instead of questioning whether they truly want the relationship, they become more focused on winning the opportunity before someone else does. Competition also introduces urgency. The possibility of losing you to another person creates pressure to act quickly. Someone who was previously hesitant may suddenly become more attentive, more affectionate, or more willing to commit because they no longer feel guaranteed access to your attention. The effect becomes even stronger in people who connect love with achievement. They may begin seeing the relationship as something to win rather than something to build. Your affection becomes a prize, and every rival becomes a threat to their sense of success and importance. The darker side is that perceived competition can awaken the ego more than the heart. A person may chase you intensely, not because they genuinely understand or appreciate you, but because they dislike the idea of someone else having what they cannot. Once the competition disappears, their interest may fade just as quickly. What appears to be growing love may actually be fear of losing an opportunity. The chase becomes stronger because your value seems confirmed by other people's interest, making your attention feel more exclusive, more desirable, and far more difficult to replace. Social proof can create urgency. Social proof can create urgency because people often look to others when deciding what deserves their attention. When someone sees that you are admired, respected, or desired by other people, they may begin viewing you as more valuable than they did before. Your perceived worth increases, not because you changed, but because other people seem to recognize something special in you. The human mind uses social proof as a shortcut for making decisions. If many people enjoy a restaurant, trust a leader, or admire a person, others naturally assume there is a good reason. The same pattern appears in dating. When someone notices that others are interested in you, they may become more interested themselves. This can create a sense of urgency. Instead of believing they have unlimited time, they begin feeling that the opportunity could disappear. The possibility that someone else might win your attention encourages faster decisions, stronger effort, and greater emotional investment. Social proof also affects perception. Confidence, popularity, and positive attention from others can make ordinary qualities seem more attractive. The person may begin noticing traits they previously ignored simply because other people have already signaled that you are desirable. The darker side is that urgency created by social proof does not always reflect genuine compatibility. Someone may chase you because they fear missing out, not because they truly understand who you are. Their attraction grows from the reactions of others rather than their own experience. What feels like sudden romantic interest may actually be a psychological response to perceived demand. The person believes your value has increased because other people appear to want you. making them feel they must act quickly before the chance is gone. In many cases, they are chasing the competition as much as they are chasing you. People chase attention they once controlled. People chase attention they once controlled because losing influence over someone can feel like losing power. When a person becomes used to your constant messages, affection, or availability, they may begin expecting that attention as something permanent. The moment it changes, they often notice its value far more than they did before. This reaction is driven by the loss of certainty. They once knew you would reply, make time for them, or seek their approval. When those patterns disappear, the relationship no longer feels predictable. Instead of feeling secure, they begin wondering why the dynamic has changed and whether they are still important in your life. The shift can create unexpected pursuit. Someone who rarely initiated conversations may suddenly text first. A person who seemed emotionally distant may become noticeably more attentive. They are not always responding to deeper love. Sometimes they are reacting to the uncomfortable realization that they no longer control the flow of your attention. This becomes even stronger when their identity depended on feeling admired or pursued. If they were accustomed to being the center of your focus, your emotional independence can feel like a personal loss. They may try harder to regain the position they once held, believing that restoring your attention will restore their sense of importance. The darker side is that some people confuse regaining control with rebuilding connection. They may chase you intensely until they feel your attention has returned, only to lose interest once they feel secure again. What appeared to be renewed affection was actually an attempt to recover influence. They were not only chasing your heart, they were chasing the comfort of knowing they could still command your attention whenever they wanted. Rejection can trigger ego-driven pursuit. Rejection can trigger ego-driven pursuit because being turned down often wounds more than the heart. For many people, rejection challenges how they see themselves. Instead of simply accepting that the relationship is not right, they begin questioning their attractiveness, value, or importance. The desire to reconnect may become less about love and more about repairing a damaged self-image. The ego struggles with losing something it expected to have. If someone believed they would be chosen, admired, or desired, rejection creates an uncomfortable gap between their expectations and reality. Rather than accepting the outcome, they may become determined to reverse it. Winning your attention starts feeling like proof that they were never truly rejected. This can make their behavior seem surprisingly intense. They may send repeated messages, suddenly become more affectionate, or try to impress you in ways they never did before. The chase is fueled by the need to restore pride rather than build genuine intimacy. Every small sign of interest from you feels like evidence that they are recovering what they lost. The pattern becomes stronger when rejection happens publicly or after they have invested heavily in the relationship. They may feel embarrassed, challenged, or replaced, making the pursuit even more emotional. Their focus shifts from understanding whether the relationship is healthy to proving that they are still desirable. The darker side is that ego-driven pursuit often fades once validation is restored. Some people lose interest the moment they know they can have you again because their real goal was never lasting connection. They were trying to erase the emotional sting of rejection. What appeared to be passionate love may have been an attempt to protect pride, regain control, and convince themselves that being rejected never truly defined their worth. Distance can magnify positive memories. Distance can magnify positive memories because the mind rarely remembers the past exactly as it happened. When someone is no longer part of your daily life, the emotional pain of separation can cause the brain to focus on the moments that felt comforting, exciting, or meaningful, while slowly pushing the unpleasant memories into the background. This happens because memory is selective, not perfect. As time passes, arguments become less vivid, disappointments lose their emotional intensity, and small acts of kindness begin to stand out more clearly. The relationship starts looking better in memory than it often felt in reality. Distance also gives the imagination room to grow. Without new experiences replacing the old ones, the mind fills empty spaces with idealized versions of the past. A simple conversation becomes unforgettable. A brief moment of affection feels extraordinary. The person may begin believing they lost something far more perfect than it actually was. This can make people return even when the relationship was unhealthy. They are responding to carefully edited memories rather than the complete truth. The emotional comfort of remembering the good moments becomes stronger than the painful reality that caused the relationship to end in the first place. The darker side is that nostalgia can quietly rewrite history. Someone may convince themselves that everything would be different if they had another chance, while forgetting the patterns that repeatedly caused pain. They become attached to the memory instead of the reality. What looks like renewed love may actually be the mind protecting itself from loss by preserving only the brightest moments. Distance does not always reveal the truth about a relationship. Sometimes it simply softens the painful parts until the past feels more beautiful than it ever truly was, making return seem wiser than it really is. Inconsistent affection is often remembered most. Inconsistent affection is often remembered most because the human mind pays greater attention to emotional experiences that are unpredictable. When love, kindness, or attention appears one moment and disappears the next, the contrast creates a stronger emotional imprint than affection that is steady and reliable. The brain is naturally drawn to patterns it cannot predict. A relationship filled with mixed signals forces the mind to stay alert, constantly wondering when the next moment of warmth will arrive. Because every affectionate gesture feels uncertain, it becomes emotionally significant. Small acts of kindness that would normally seem ordinary begin to feel unforgettable. This is why people often remember inconsistent partners long after stable relationships have faded from memory. The emotional highs feel more exciting because they are surrounded by emotional lows. Every reunion feels meaningful, every loving message feels earned, and every moment of closeness seems to carry extra weight because it follows a period of distance or confusion. Over time, the person may begin remembering only the emotional peaks. They replay the passionate conversations, unexpected compliments, and moments of tenderness while overlooking the uncertainty that made those moments feel so intense in the first place. The inconsistency becomes invisible, but the emotional impact remains. The darker side is that this pattern can create unhealthy attachment. Someone may believe they cannot forget a person because the connection was extraordinary, when in reality, their memory has been shaped by emotional unpredictability. The relationship stands out not because it was deeply compatible, but because it repeatedly activated hope, disappointment, relief, and longing. What feels unforgettable is not always what was healthiest. Sometimes the mind remembers inconsistent affection most because uncertainty forced it to stay emotionally engaged long after peace would have allowed it to quietly let go. Unpredictable acceptance can create obsession. Unpredictable acceptance can create obsession because people become emotionally invested when they never know whether they will be welcomed or rejected. When someone sometimes makes you feel deeply valued and other times acts distant or uninterested, your mind naturally begins searching for a pattern that explains the change. The brain struggles with inconsistency. If acceptance were constant, the relationship would feel secure. If rejection were constant, it would eventually become easier to accept. But when both happen without warning, the mind remains emotionally trapped between hope and fear. That uncertainty keeps the connection alive long after it should have faded. Every positive interaction begins to feel like a victory. A kind message, warm smile, or affectionate gesture brings relief because it temporarily ends the anxiety created by emotional distance. The person starts craving those moments, believing that if they try harder, they can make the acceptance permanent. Over time, they may begin changing themselves to increase their chances of being accepted. They become more careful with their words, more willing to compromise, and more afraid of making mistakes. Their focus slowly shifts away from enjoying the relationship and toward avoiding rejection. The darker side is that unpredictable acceptance can create emotional dependence. Someone may stop asking whether the relationship is healthy because all of their energy is spent trying to earn consistent affection. The obsession grows, not because the connection is exceptionally compatible, but because uncertainty has made acceptance feel like a reward that must constantly be won. What appears to be powerful love may actually be the mind-chasing emotional security. The person becomes attached to the possibility of finally receiving steady acceptance, believing that one more effort, one more conversation, or one more chance will permanently end the uncertainty that keeps pulling them back. Fear of replacement can intensify pursuit. Fear of replacement can intensify pursuit because people often become more emotionally invested when they believe they are about to lose their place in someone else's life. The possibility that another person could receive the attention, affection, or commitment they once enjoyed creates a powerful sense of urgency. This fear activates the instinct to protect what feels valuable. Even someone who appeared emotionally distant may suddenly become more attentive after sensing that your interest is shifting elsewhere. They may begin initiating conversations, expressing stronger feelings, or making promises they never made before. The threat of replacement makes the relationship feel more important than it did when it seemed secure. The mind also begins making comparisons. They wonder whether the other person is more attractive, more successful, or more compatible than they are. These thoughts can damage confidence and increase the desire to prove they are still the better choice. Instead of calmly accepting uncertainty, they may chase harder in an attempt to regain their position. For some people, the fear goes deeper than romance. Being replaced can awaken old wounds of abandonment, rejection, or not feeling good enough. Losing your attention begins to feel like confirmation of those painful beliefs, making the emotional reaction much stronger than the situation alone would justify. The darker side is that this pursuit is not always driven by genuine love. Sometimes, people simply struggle with the idea that someone else might succeed where they failed. They are fighting against the feeling of being replaced more than they are fighting for the relationship itself. What appears to be growing affection may actually be a response to threatened significance. The chase becomes stronger because losing you no longer feels like losing a relationship. It feels like losing their place, their value, and their sense of being chosen. Independence can make people chase harder. Independence can make people chase harder because emotional self-sufficiency is naturally attractive. When someone sees that your happiness, confidence, and peace do not depend on their attention, they begin to view your affection as something freely given rather than desperately needed. That choice makes your presence feel more valuable. People are often drawn to those who have a life beyond the relationship. Someone who enjoys their own company, maintains personal goals, and refuses to abandon their standards appears emotionally secure. Instead of feeling easy to influence, they seem grounded and difficult to control, which increases curiosity and interest. This independence also changes the emotional balance. If you are willing to walk away from unhealthy behavior instead of chasing reassurance, the other person may suddenly realize that losing you is a real possibility. What once felt guaranteed now feels uncertain, and uncertainty often increases emotional investment. The effect becomes stronger with people who are used to being pursued. When they meet someone who does not constantly seek validation or attention, they may feel challenged in a way they rarely experience. Instead of asking why you are not chasing them, they begin wondering how they can earn more of your time and interest. The darker side is that some people become attracted to your independence for the wrong reasons. Rather than appreciating your confidence, they see it as something they want to break. They chase not to build a healthy relationship, but to prove they can make even an independent person depend on them emotionally. What appears to be irresistible attraction may actually be a reaction to emotional freedom. Your independence reminds people that your attention is a choice, not a necessity. And that realization alone can make them value your presence far more than when they believed you would always stay. You may represent freedom from their normal life. Because people are often drawn to those who make them feel different from who they are every day. If being around you makes life feel more exciting, peaceful, adventurous, or emotionally alive, they may begin associating you with escape rather than simply attraction. Many people quietly carry stress, routine, loneliness, or emotional dissatisfaction. When they meet someone who makes those feelings temporarily disappear, the experience can feel almost addictive. Conversations become something they look forward to because, for a little while, they forget the pressures waiting outside the relationship. The attraction may have less to do with your appearance and more to do with the emotional world you create. You might make them laugh when life feels heavy, encourage them to dream again, or help them feel understood in ways they rarely experience. Your presence becomes linked to relief, possibility, and emotional freedom. This is why some people become intensely attached very quickly. They are not only pursuing a relationship, they are pursuing the version of themselves that seems happier, lighter, and more hopeful whenever they are with you. Losing you can feel like returning to a life they no longer enjoy. The darker side is that people sometimes mistake escape for compatibility. They believe they have found the perfect partner when they have actually found temporary relief from an unhappy reality. Once everyday responsibilities return, the fantasy may begin to fade. What feels like extraordinary chemistry may actually be the emotional contrast between you and the life they are trying to escape. They chase because your presence represents something they have been missing for years. In their mind, being with you does not only mean finding love, it means finding a doorway out of the life they no longer want to live. Mystery lets fantasy fill the gaps. Mystery lets fantasy fill the gaps because the human mind dislikes missing information. When someone knows very little about you, they naturally begin creating answers on their own. Instead of accepting uncertainty, they imagine your personality, intentions, feelings, and future based on what they hope is true. This happens because the brain is constantly searching for complete stories. If you reveal only small pieces of yourself, the other person often connects those pieces with imagination rather than facts. A quiet personality becomes mysterious. A thoughtful smile becomes hidden affection. Limited communication becomes proof that there is something extraordinary waiting to be discovered. Fantasy is powerful because it is built from personal desires. The person is not simply seeing you. They are seeing the version of you that perfectly fits their emotional needs. If they long for loyalty, they assume you are loyal. If they crave emotional depth, they believe you possess it. Their imagination quietly transforms uncertainty into certainty. The less information they have, the easier this becomes. Every unanswered question gives fantasy more room to grow. They begin interpreting ordinary actions as meaningful signs, convincing themselves that the connection is deeper than the available evidence actually suggests. The darker side is that mystery can create attachment to an illusion. Someone may fall deeply in love with the person they have imagined instead of the person standing in front of them. When reality eventually replaces fantasy, disappointment often follows because no real person can perfectly match an idealized image. What appears to be irresistible attraction may actually be the mind completing an unfinished picture with hope, desire, and imagination. The mystery feels magnetic because it allows people to create the perfect version of you, and that imagined version is often far more difficult to let go than reality itself. Confidence can make people crave your approval. Confidence can make people crave your approval because self-assurance often signals emotional value. When someone appears comfortable with themselves, makes decisions without constant validation, and carries quiet certainty, others naturally begin placing greater importance on their opinions. Their approval starts feeling more meaningful because it does not seem easily given. People are often influenced by those who appear secure in their own worth. A confident person does not seem desperate to be liked, and that emotional stability makes their attention feel intentional rather than automatic. If they compliment you, show interest, or express admiration, it feels earned instead of routine. This changes the emotional dynamic. Someone may begin working harder to impress you, not because you demanded it, but because your standards appear genuine. A smile from you feels rewarding. A compliment feels memorable. Even small signs of approval can have a lasting emotional impact because they come from someone whose opinion seems selective. Confidence also creates curiosity. People wonder what earns your respect, what captures your attention, and whether they are measuring up. They may adjust their behavior, become more thoughtful, or seek opportunities to gain your recognition. The desire for your approval slowly becomes part of the attraction. The darker side is that some people become more interested in winning your validation than building a healthy relationship. They stop asking whether they truly connect with you and begin focusing only on being accepted by you. Their self-worth starts depending on your reactions instead of their own confidence. What appears to be deep attraction may actually be the emotional pull of selective approval. Your confidence makes your attention feel valuable, and your recognition becomes something they chase because it seems to confirm that they too are worthy of being chosen. Unequal emotional sharing can deepen their attachment. Unequal emotional sharing can deepen their attachment because the person who reveals more of themselves often becomes more emotionally invested. When someone shares private fears, painful memories, personal dreams, or hidden insecurities while you remain more reserved, they begin placing a larger emotional investment into the connection than you do. This happens because vulnerability creates commitment. Every personal secret shared feels like a piece of themselves being placed in your hands. Once those emotions are expressed, the relationship begins carrying greater psychological weight. They are no longer attached only to you. They are attached to the version of themselves they have trusted you to see. The imbalance becomes stronger when your emotions remain difficult to read. They know your stories, your experiences, and your struggles, but they still wonder what you truly think or feel about them. This uncertainty encourages them to keep opening up, hoping that greater honesty will eventually bring the same level of emotional openness from you. Over time, they may mistake emotional investment for emotional compatibility. Because they have shared so much, they begin believing the relationship must be special. Walking away feels difficult because leaving would also mean accepting that all of their vulnerability may not have created the connection they imagined. The darker side is that unequal emotional sharing can be used to create dependence. If one person continually encourages vulnerability while revealing very little in return, the other may become deeply attached without receiving the same emotional trust. The relationship begins to feel one-sided, but the emotional investment keeps growing. What appears to be powerful love may simply be the result of unequal vulnerability. The more someone gives away pieces of themselves, the harder it often becomes to separate their emotions from the relationship, even when the connection itself has never been truly balanced. The one who reveals more often invests more. The one who reveals more often invests more because emotional disclosure creates psychological commitment. Every time someone shares a painful memory, hidden fear, private dream, or personal insecurity, they are placing part of their inner world into another person's hands. That act of trust naturally increases their emotional investment in the relationship. This happens because vulnerability is not emotionally neutral. The more someone exposes their authentic self, the more they begin to care about how that openness is received. They want to feel understood, accepted, and valued. If those needs are met, the bond grows stronger. If they are ignored, the emotional disappointment becomes much deeper. The imbalance becomes especially noticeable when one person remains emotionally guarded. While one partner is revealing personal experiences and deepest feelings, the other shares very little in return. The person who has opened up often becomes more attached because they have invested far more emotionally into the connection. This can create the illusion that the relationship is deeper than it truly is. The person may believe that because they have shared everything, genuine intimacy already exists. In reality, emotional closeness requires mutual vulnerability, not one-sided disclosure. The darker side is that some people encourage others to reveal everything while carefully protecting their own emotions. They become the safe listener without becoming emotionally available themselves. This creates an uneven relationship where one person feels deeply connected while the other remains emotionally distant. What appears to be extraordinary love may actually be the natural result of unequal emotional investment. The person who has revealed the most often finds it hardest to walk away because leaving means abandoning not only the relationship, but also every vulnerable piece of themselves they trusted another person to hold. Heavy investment makes walking away harder. Heavy investment makes walking away harder because people naturally struggle to abandon something into which they have poured significant time, emotion, energy, or sacrifice. The more someone gives to a relationship, the more difficult it becomes to accept that those efforts may never produce the future they imagined. This happens because the mind dislikes feeling that its investment was wasted. After months or years of emotional support, late-night conversations, forgiveness, compromise, and hope, leaving can feel like admitting that all of those sacrifices led nowhere. Instead of stepping away, many people convince themselves that one more chance will finally make everything worthwhile. The investment is not only emotional. It can include shared memories, future plans, mutual friends, financial commitments, or personal dreams built around the relationship. Every additional investment makes the connection feel heavier, even when the relationship is no longer healthy or fulfilling. Over time, people may stop asking whether they are happy and begin asking whether they have already come too far to leave. They stay because they cannot bear the thought of losing everything they have already given. The relationship becomes something they feel responsible for saving, regardless of the emotional cost. The darker side is that unhealthy relationships often survive because of accumulated investment rather than genuine love. Someone may continue chasing affection, accepting disrespect, or ignoring obvious problems simply because they believe leaving would make all of their previous effort meaningless. What appears to be deep devotion may actually be the weight of everything they have already invested. They are no longer holding on because the relationship keeps making them happy. They are holding on because walking away feels like letting go of a part of themselves they spent years trying to build. Effort can increase perceived value. Effort can increase perceived value because people naturally appreciate what they have worked hard to obtain. When something requires patience, persistence, and emotional investment, the mind often assumes it must be more valuable than something that came easily. This same pattern frequently appears in dating and relationships. The brain dislikes believing that hard work was unnecessary. If someone spends weeks trying to earn your attention, months building your trust, or years proving their commitment, they are more likely to view the relationship as meaningful. Their effort becomes evidence that what they are pursuing must be worth having. This is why people sometimes become more attached after overcoming obstacles. Every challenge they face makes the connection feel more significant. Waiting for replies, earning trust, or gradually breaking through emotional walls can create the feeling that the relationship is rare and valuable because it demanded so much from them. However, effort does not automatically create compatibility. A person can work incredibly hard for a relationship that is emotionally unhealthy or fundamentally mismatched. Their growing attachment often comes from the amount they have invested rather than the quality of the connection itself. The darker side is that some people intentionally make themselves difficult to reach simply to increase perceived value. They believe that if someone has to work harder for their attention, they will become more emotionally attached. While this can sometimes increase pursuit, it can also create relationships built on chasing instead of mutual trust. What appears to be deep love may actually be the mind trying to justify its own investment. The more effort someone gives, the more valuable the relationship begins to feel. They convince themselves that something requiring so much energy must be extraordinary, even when the connection is quietly costing them far more than it is giving back. Patience can make your attention feel earned. Patience can make your attention feel earned because people often value what takes time to receive. When your affection is not rushed, forced, or given simply because someone expects it, your attention begins to feel intentional. Instead of seeming automatic, it appears to be the result of genuine trust and careful choice. The human mind naturally appreciates rewards that require waiting. If someone spends time getting to know you, respecting your boundaries, and consistently showing their character before receiving your full attention, the connection often feels more meaningful. Your affection becomes something they believe they have earned through honesty, consistency, and effort. This also changes how your attention is perceived. A compliment feels more sincere because it is not freely given to everyone. A moment of vulnerability feels more significant because it arrives after trust has been built. Every step forward carries greater emotional weight because it follows patience rather than urgency. Patience also creates anticipation. Instead of experiencing everything at once, the relationship unfolds gradually. Each conversation reveals something new, allowing curiosity and emotional investment to grow naturally. The slower pace gives both people time to appreciate the connection instead of rushing through it. The darker side is that patience can be manipulated. Someone may deliberately delay affection, not to build trust, but to make another person work harder for validation. They confuse emotional withholding with emotional value, creating a relationship where attention feels like a reward instead of a shared experience. True patience is different. It is not about making someone chase endlessly. It is about allowing trust to develop naturally. When attention grows through mutual respect and emotional consistency, it feels earned because both people invested time in building something real rather than trying to win something uncertain. Calm rejection can increase curiosity. Calm rejection can increase curiosity because it challenges what many people expect to happen. Most people anticipate emotional reactions, lengthy explanations, or attempts to change their mind. When someone declines interest with confidence, kindness, and emotional control, it often leaves a stronger impression than anger or hostility ever could. The mind naturally searches for explanations when expectations are broken. Instead of focusing on the rejection itself, the other person may begin wondering why you seemed so peaceful. They question whether you were ever emotionally attached, whether someone else has your attention, or what gives you such quiet confidence. Those unanswered questions can keep them thinking about you long after the conversation has ended. This reaction becomes even stronger when someone is used to being pursued. A calm rejection removes the emotional response they expected, making them reassess the situation. Instead of feeling in control, they may suddenly become curious about the person who walked away without bitterness or desperation. Your emotional composure also communicates self-respect. It suggests that your decisions are guided by your standards rather than fear of disappointing others. That quiet certainty can make your opinion seem more valuable because it does not appear easily influenced. The darker side is that some people mistake curiosity for genuine attraction. They may begin chasing simply because they cannot understand why they were rejected so easily. Their interest grows from the need to solve the mystery or restore their pride rather than build a meaningful relationship. What appears to be growing affection may actually be the mind reacting to an unexpected outcome. Calm rejection creates unanswered questions, and those questions can become surprisingly difficult to forget, especially for someone who expected your approval to be easy to obtain. Detachment can make your attention feel selective. Detachment can make your attention feel selective because emotional independence changes how people interpret your interest. When you do not appear desperate for validation, approval, or constant closeness, your attention feels intentional rather than automatic. People begin believing that if you choose to invest in someone, that choice must carry real meaning. This happens because emotionally detached people often seem difficult to impress. They are not cold or uncaring, but they do not give their time and affection to everyone equally. As a result, every compliment, thoughtful message, or moment of vulnerability feels more valuable because it appears to come from careful judgment instead of emotional need. The human mind naturally values selective approval. If someone seems to admire everyone, their praise loses emotional weight. But when approval is offered sparingly, people often assume it has been genuinely earned. Your attention begins to feel like recognition rather than routine politeness. Detachment also creates curiosity. Others may wonder what catches your interest, what standards you have, and what makes someone important enough to receive your emotional energy. That uncertainty can make them invest more effort in understanding and impressing you. The darker side is that emotional detachment can be used as a strategy to increase pursuit. Someone may intentionally appear unavailable or emotionally distant simply to make their attention feel more exclusive. This can create relationships based on chasing approval instead of building trust. Healthy detachment is different. It comes from emotional security, not manipulation. It allows you to care deeply without depending on constant reassurance. When your attention is given freely but thoughtfully, people often value it more because they understand it comes from genuine choice, not fear of being alone or forgotten. Strong standards attract persistent people. Strong standards attract persistent people because clear boundaries make your attention feel valuable. When you refuse to settle for disrespect, dishonesty, or inconsistent effort, people quickly realize that being part of your life is not automatic. Your approval must be earned through actions, not empty promises. This creates a different emotional dynamic. Instead of assuming they already have your interest, people begin wondering what it takes to gain your trust and respect. Those who genuinely value you may become more intentional, communicating better, showing greater consistency, and putting real effort into the relationship. Your standards encourage them to become their best rather than rely on charm alone. High standards also signal self-respect. They communicate that you are willing to walk away from relationships that do not meet your emotional needs. That confidence often increases attraction because it shows your happiness does not depend on being chosen by just anyone. Your attention feels meaningful because it is not available to everyone. Persistent people are especially drawn to this challenge. Some admire your principles and genuinely want to prove they are worthy of your trust. Others become fascinated simply because they are not used to hearing no. The harder they have to work for your approval, the more emotionally invested they may become. The darker side is that not everyone chasing you has good intentions. Some persistent people are motivated by ego rather than love. They see your standards as an obstacle to overcome instead of values to respect. Their goal is not to build a healthy relationship, but to prove they can break down your boundaries. True standards do not exist to make people chase. They exist to protect your peace. The right person will respect your boundaries because they value who you are, not because they enjoy the challenge of changing your mind. Resistance to common tactics creates intrigue. Resistance to common tactics creates intrigue because people naturally become curious when their usual methods no longer produce the expected results. Someone who is used to impressing others with charm, compliments, attention, or confidence may become fascinated when those same approaches have little effect on you. Your response breaks their expectations, making them wonder what makes you different. The human mind pays special attention to the unexpected. When everyone else reacts in a predictable way, your calm independence stands out. You do not appear easily flattered, emotionally rushed, or persuaded by surface-level attraction. Instead of losing interest, many people become more curious because they cannot immediately understand what influences you. This curiosity often turns into greater emotional investment. They begin observing your behavior more closely, trying to understand your values, standards, and personality. They may put more effort into meaningful conversations, become more authentic, or look for deeper ways to connect because their usual strategies no longer seem effective. Your resistance also communicates confidence. It suggests that your decisions are guided by your own judgment rather than by the opinions or approval of others. That quiet confidence can make your attention feel more valuable because it appears thoughtful instead of automatic. The darker side is that some people see your resistance as a challenge rather than a quality to respect. Instead of appreciating your standards, they become determined to break through them simply to satisfy their ego. Their pursuit is driven by the desire to succeed where others may have failed. Healthy intrigue comes from authenticity, not games. When you cannot be easily influenced by ordinary tactics, you encourage genuine effort instead of superficial performance. The right people become curious about who you truly are, while the wrong people reveal themselves by treating your boundaries as obstacles instead of something worthy of respect. Self-control can signal hidden power. Self-control can signal hidden power because the ability to master your emotions often appears stronger than the ability to control other people. When someone remains calm under pressure, refuses to react impulsively, and chooses their words carefully, others naturally assume there is a deeper strength beneath the surface. Quiet discipline often feels more intimidating than loud confidence. People are conditioned to expect emotional reactions. They expect anger after disrespect, desperation after rejection, and panic when things go wrong. When you remain composed instead, you become difficult to predict. That emotional stability creates curiosity because it suggests your decisions are guided by intention rather than impulse. Self-control also changes the balance of influence. Someone who cannot easily provoke you loses one of the easiest ways to gain control. If compliments do not make you arrogant and criticism does not make you defensive, your emotional state becomes much harder for others to manipulate. This quiet resilience often earns respect without demanding it. In dating, self-control can make your attention feel more valuable. If you do not rush into emotional attachment or seek constant reassurance, people may see your affection as something carefully chosen rather than freely given. Your interest carries greater weight because it appears to come from confidence instead of emotional need. The darker side is that some people become fascinated by this emotional control because they see it as a challenge. They may test your patience, push your boundaries, or provoke reactions simply to prove they can break your composure. Their pursuit is driven less by genuine connection and more by the desire to uncover what lies beneath your calm exterior. True self-control is not emotional suppression. It is the ability to choose your response instead of becoming controlled by your emotions. That quiet discipline often communicates a level of inner strength that words alone can never fully reveal. Your approval may feel like proof of importance. Your approval may feel like proof of importance because many people quietly measure their value through the opinions of those they admire. When someone respects you, desires you, or sees you as emotionally selective, your acceptance can begin to represent much more than simple affection. It becomes confirmation that they matter. This happens because approval carries emotional meaning. A compliment from a stranger may feel pleasant, but the same compliment from someone whose opinion is deeply valued can have a lasting impact. The more they admire you, the more powerful your approval becomes. Your words begin influencing how they see themselves. Over time, they may start seeking your validation without realizing it. They become more aware of your reactions, pay closer attention to your opinions, and feel unusually relieved when you praise them. A smile from you lifts their confidence. while criticism or emotional distance may leave them questioning their worth. This pattern becomes especially strong in people who struggle with self-esteem. Instead of building confidence from within, they begin relying on your approval to feel secure. The relationship slowly shifts from mutual connection to emotional dependence, where your opinion determines whether they feel good enough. The darker side is that some people intentionally make their approval difficult to earn. They give praise sparingly, withhold validation, or create emotional uncertainty to make others work harder for recognition. The person being affected may chase approval so intensely that they forget to ask whether the relationship is healthy. What appears to be deep attraction may actually be a search for significance. They are not only hoping you will choose them, they are hoping your approval will finally silence the fear that they are ordinary, unworthy, or easy to replace. Your acceptance becomes proof that they matter, even if only for a moment. People chase those they cannot easily impress. People chase those they cannot easily impress because effortless approval rarely feels as rewarding as approval that must be earned. When someone is not immediately influenced by charm, appearance, money, status, or compliments, they become far more intriguing. Their attention feels valuable because it cannot be bought with the usual tactics. This happens because many people are accustomed to receiving positive reactions with little effort. They know which jokes to tell, what image to present, or how to make a good first impression. But when those same methods fail to create the expected response, curiosity begins to replace confidence. They start wondering what truly earns your respect. The challenge often increases emotional investment. Instead of losing interest, they may put more effort into understanding your values, personality, and standards. They become more thoughtful with their words and actions because they realize superficial attraction is not enough. Your approval begins to feel like something meaningful rather than automatic. This also communicates emotional independence. It suggests that your opinions are based on character instead of appearances. People often respect someone who cannot be easily influenced because it signals confidence, self-awareness, and strong personal values. The darker side is that not everyone responds with healthy intentions. Some people become obsessed with proving they can impress you. The relationship becomes a competition instead of a connection. They chase your attention not because they appreciate who you are, but because they cannot accept that their usual methods no longer work. What appears to be growing attraction may actually be the desire to overcome a challenge. Your inability to be easily impressed makes your approval feel exclusive, and exclusivity naturally increases perceived value. The more difficult your respect seems to earn, the more emotionally significant it becomes to those who desperately want to receive it. You may challenge the identity they protect. Because every person carries a mental image of who they believe they are. Some see themselves as attractive, powerful, independent, or impossible to reject. When your reactions do not match that self-image, you quietly force them to question beliefs they have spent years defending. This happens because identity is deeply tied to emotion. If someone believes they always attract attention, but you remain emotionally calm, they may begin wondering why their usual influence is not working. If they see themselves as irresistible, but you set firm boundaries, your response challenges the story they tell themselves about who they are. The mind naturally resists threats to identity. Instead of accepting that two people simply may not be compatible, they often become more determined to change your opinion. Winning your affection starts feeling like a way to restore the image they want to believe about themselves. The chase becomes personal rather than romantic. This is why some people suddenly become more persistent after rejection. They are no longer trying only to build a relationship. They are trying to prove that they are still the person they believe themselves to be. Your acceptance becomes evidence that their identity remains intact. The darker side is that this pursuit is often driven by ego instead of genuine connection. They may ignore obvious incompatibilities, overlook your feelings, or continue chasing simply because they cannot accept that someone sees them differently than they see themselves. What appears to be passionate attraction may actually be a battle to protect self-image. They are not only trying to win your heart, they are trying to protect the version of themselves they fear could fall apart if your rejection forces them to confront a truth they have spent years avoiding. Unexpected behavior creates curiosity. Unexpected behavior creates curiosity because the human mind is naturally drawn to what it cannot easily predict. When someone behaves differently from what people expect, they immediately become more memorable. Instead of moving on, others begin wondering what motivated the behavior and what it reveals about the person's character. The brain constantly looks for patterns to make sense of the world. Most social interactions follow familiar routines, making people's reactions relatively easy to anticipate. When someone responds in an unexpected way, that pattern is interrupted. The mind becomes more alert because it now has an unanswered question that demands attention. In dating, this can have a powerful effect. If everyone expects you to become emotionally attached quickly, but you remain calm and patient, people begin wondering why. If you respond with kindness instead of anger or confidence instead of desperation, your reaction stands out because it breaks their expectations. That surprise often makes them think about you long after the interaction has ended. Unexpected behavior also creates mystery. Since your actions cannot be easily predicted, people may pay closer attention to your words, expressions, and decisions. They start searching for clues that explain your personality, making the connection feel more interesting than one they immediately understand. The darker side is that unpredictability can be used to manipulate emotions. Some people intentionally behave inconsistently to keep others confused and emotionally invested. They mistake uncertainty for attraction and create curiosity through emotional instability rather than authenticity. Healthy curiosity comes from being genuinely different, not from playing games. When your actions are guided by confidence, values, and emotional maturity instead of the need to impress others, people naturally become interested. They are not chasing confusion. They are trying to understand someone who refuses to fit into the predictable patterns they have become accustomed to seeing every day. People desire what they cannot categorize. People desire what they cannot categorize because the human mind is fascinated by things that refuse to fit into familiar patterns. When someone cannot easily define your personality, intentions, or emotional style, they often spend more time thinking about you. The unanswered questions create curiosity, and curiosity can slowly grow into attraction. The brain naturally organizes people into simple categories. Someone is confident or shy, emotional or distant, predictable or spontaneous. These labels help the mind process information quickly, but when you consistently defy those expectations, the brain loses its shortcut. Instead of reaching a conclusion, it keeps searching for one. This uncertainty makes people observe you more closely. They begin paying attention to your conversations, your reactions, and the small details of your behavior. Every interaction feels like another clue. They hope that eventually they will understand who you really are, but your complexity keeps the mystery alive. This effect becomes even stronger when your behavior is authentic rather than calculated. You are not trying to confuse people. You simply refuse to reduce yourself to one predictable personality. You can be confident without arrogance, kind without weakness, and quiet without insecurity. That emotional balance is difficult to label, making it naturally intriguing. The darker side is that some people intentionally create confusion to appear mysterious. They constantly change their personality, send mixed signals, or hide their true intentions to keep others emotionally invested. This creates fascination, but it rarely creates trust. Real intrigue comes from authenticity, not confusion. People remain interested because they realize there is more to discover than what appears on the surface. They are drawn to your depth, not because you are impossible to understand, but because every time they think they have you figured out, they discover another genuine layer they never expected to find. Unpredictability keeps the mind searching. Unpredictability keeps the mind searching because the brain is designed to find patterns and create certainty. When someone's behavior constantly changes without a clear explanation, the mind refuses to let go. Instead, it keeps looking for answers, believing that one more conversation or one more interaction will finally make everything make sense. This happens because certainty allows the brain to relax, while uncertainty keeps it alert. If you always know what to expect from someone, your mind quickly adapts and moves on. But when their behavior shifts between warmth and distance, kindness and indifference, or closeness and silence, your attention remains locked on them. The unanswered questions become emotionally difficult to ignore. In dating, this often creates stronger mental attachment than consistent affection. A person may spend hours replaying conversations, analyzing text messages, and searching for hidden meanings behind small actions. They are not always thinking about the relationship because it is healthy. They are thinking because their brain is trying to solve an emotional mystery. The longer the unpredictability continues, the more emotionally invested they may become. Every unexpected act of affection feels like a breakthrough, while every period of distance creates new doubt. The relationship slowly turns into a puzzle they feel compelled to solve. The darker side is that some people deliberately use unpredictability to keep others emotionally attached. By alternating between attention and withdrawal, they create a cycle that keeps the other person constantly searching for reassurance and meaning. The focus shifts away from genuine connection and toward emotional survival. True attraction grows through trust and consistency. Obsession often grows through uncertainty. When someone cannot predict where they stand with you, their mind keeps searching for answers, believing clarity is just one more interaction away, even when that clarity may never actually come. Ambiguity makes people replay conversations. Ambiguity makes people replay conversations because the human mind struggles to leave unanswered questions behind. When someone's words, intentions, or feelings are unclear, the conversation rarely ends when it is over. Instead, it continues inside the other person's mind as they search for hidden meanings they may have missed. The brain naturally seeks certainty. Clear communication allows the mind to move on, but vague statements, mixed signals, and uncertain emotions leave the story unfinished. A simple message can be read repeatedly. A smile can be interpreted in different ways. Even an ordinary goodbye may begin to feel significant because its meaning was never clearly explained. This mental replay is an attempt to reduce uncertainty. People remember your exact words, your tone of voice, your facial expressions, and even small pauses in conversation. They begin asking themselves whether you were interested, disappointed, hiding your feelings, or trying to send a message without saying it directly. Over time, this repeated analysis can strengthen emotional attachment. The more someone thinks about the conversation, the more emotionally important it becomes. They may mistake constant thinking for deep attraction, when in reality, their mind is simply trying to solve an unanswered question. The darker side is that ambiguity can be used to keep people emotionally invested. Someone may avoid giving direct answers, reveal only part of their intentions, or deliberately leave conversations open-ended. This encourages the other person to keep searching for clarity instead of accepting reality. Healthy relationships are built on honest communication, not endless guessing. When ambiguity replaces clarity, the mind keeps returning to the same conversation, hoping to discover an answer that was never actually spoken. The attachment grows because the emotional story feels incomplete, and the brain rarely stops searching until it believes the missing piece has finally been found. People often chase the story they created. People often chase the story they created because the mind has a powerful habit of filling emotional gaps with imagination. Instead of seeing a relationship exactly as it is, people unconsciously build a personal narrative around it. They imagine who you are, what the future could become, and what the connection is supposed to mean. Over time, that story can become more emotionally powerful than reality itself. This happens because the brain prefers complete narratives. When information is missing, it naturally fills the empty spaces with hope, assumptions, and personal desires. A few meaningful conversations become the beginning of a lifelong romance. A moment of kindness becomes proof of hidden love. Small experiences are transformed into evidence supporting the story they already want to believe. As the story grows, emotional attachment grows with it. The person begins investing in a future that has never actually existed. They replay imagined possibilities, picture future memories, and convince themselves that the relationship is meant to happen. Every interaction becomes another chapter in the story they have already written in their mind. The danger is that reality rarely matches imagination. Clear signs of incompatibility, emotional distance, or lack of commitment are often ignored because they do not fit the narrative. The person protects the story instead of accepting the truth. The darker side is that some people intentionally leave enough mystery for others to create their own fantasies. By revealing very little while offering occasional moments of warmth, they allow imagination to do the rest. The other person becomes emotionally attached to possibilities instead of facts. What looks like intense love is sometimes nothing more than devotion to a story the mind created. They are not only chasing you, they are chasing the future, the meaning, and the emotional ending they have already imagined, believing it is only a matter of time before reality finally catches up with their fantasy. Being chosen by you may feel like a victory. Being chosen by you may feel like a victory because some people see romantic success as proof of personal value. When they view you as attractive, confident, emotionally selective, or difficult to win over, your acceptance becomes much more than the beginning of a relationship. It becomes evidence that they have achieved something meaningful. This happens because people naturally assign greater value to things that seem difficult to obtain. If your attention is not freely given, your choice carries more emotional weight. The person begins believing that earning your affection says something important about who they are. Your approval becomes a symbol of success rather than simply mutual attraction. This feeling grows even stronger when they have faced rejection in the past. Being chosen by someone they deeply admire can temporarily silence old insecurities. It feels as though every painful experience has finally been corrected. Your acceptance becomes proof that they are attractive enough, worthy enough, or important enough after all. The danger is that the relationship can slowly turn into a personal achievement instead of an emotional connection. The person may become so focused on winning your heart that they stop asking whether the relationship is actually healthy or compatible. The goal becomes being chosen rather than building something lasting. The darker side is that some people lose interest once they achieve that victory. Their deepest motivation was never genuine love. It was the satisfaction of proving they could succeed where others might have failed. Once they receive your affection, the challenge disappears, and so does much of their excitement. What appears to be deep devotion may actually be the pursuit of validation. They are not only hoping to be loved, they are hoping that being chosen by you will finally prove to themselves that they are someone worth choosing. Struggle can be mistaken for special connection. Struggle can be mistaken for a special connection because people often believe that difficult relationships must also be meaningful. When a relationship is filled with obstacles, emotional highs and lows, repeated misunderstandings, and constant effort, the intensity can create the illusion that the bond is unusually deep. The mind naturally gives importance to what requires sacrifice. If someone has spent months fighting for your attention, forgiving repeated disappointments, or trying to make the relationship work, they may begin believing that such effort could only exist if the connection were extraordinary. Walking away feels impossible because it would mean accepting that all of that struggle may not have been necessary. This pattern becomes stronger when moments of happiness appear between periods of emotional pain. Every reunion feels magical because it follows conflict. Every act of affection feels precious because it arrives after distance. The emotional contrast makes ordinary moments feel unforgettable, convincing the person that they have found something rare. Over time, they may stop measuring the relationship by peace, trust, or compatibility. Instead, they measure it by how much they are willing to endure. The more they suffer, the more convinced they become that the relationship must be worth saving. The darker side is that unhealthy relationships often survive because people confuse emotional difficulty with emotional depth. They believe the constant struggle proves the love is real, when in reality, it may simply reflect unresolved wounds, poor communication, or emotional instability. Real connection does not require endless suffering to prove its value. Genuine love is built on trust, consistency, and mutual respect. When struggle becomes the main evidence that a relationship is special, people often find themselves protecting pain instead of protecting their peace, believing hardship is a sign of destiny rather than a warning to let go. Emotional distance can feel strangely familiar. Emotional distance can feel strangely familiar because people are often drawn toward relationship patterns they experienced long before they understood them. If someone grew up receiving inconsistent affection, emotional neglect, or unpredictable love, distance may quietly feel normal even when it causes pain. Their mind mistakes familiarity for compatibility. The brain naturally seeks what it recognizes. Healthy, emotionally available relationships can feel unfamiliar to someone who learned that love must be earned. Instead of feeling exciting, steady affection may seem boring or even suspicious. Emotional distance, however, feels recognizable because it matches an old emotional pattern their nervous system has known for years. This is why some people repeatedly choose partners who are unavailable, inconsistent, or difficult to reach. They believe they are following attraction, but they may actually be following familiarity. The emotional chase feels meaningful because it resembles the relationships that shaped their earliest understanding of love. Over time, they begin connecting emotional effort with emotional value. The harder they work for affection, the more important the relationship seems. Calm, secure love feels unfamiliar, while emotional uncertainty creates a strange sense of comfort because it mirrors the past. The darker side is that this pattern can keep people trapped in unhealthy relationships. They continue chasing emotionally distant partners, believing they have found deep chemistry, when they are actually repeating unresolved emotional wounds. Every moment of warmth feels like a reward because it briefly ends the loneliness they have learned to expect. What feels like destiny may simply be an old emotional pattern repeating itself. The attraction is powerful, not because the relationship is exceptionally healthy, but because the emotional distance feels familiar enough to mistake for love. Until those old wounds are recognized, the heart may continue confusing what feels normal with what is genuinely good for it. Inconsistent affection may feel like chemistry. Inconsistent affection may feel like chemistry because emotional unpredictability creates powerful emotional highs and lows that are easily mistaken for genuine romantic connection. When someone alternates between warmth and distance, attention and silence, or closeness and withdrawal, every moment of affection begins to feel unusually exciting. The emotional intensity convinces many people they have found something rare. This happens because the brain responds strongly to uncertainty. A kind message after days of distance feels more rewarding than constant affection because it arrives when it is least expected. That sudden relief creates a powerful emotional reaction, making ordinary moments seem extraordinary simply because they break a period of doubt. Over time, the person begins associating these emotional swings with passion. They believe the relationship feels special because they cannot stop thinking about it. In reality, their mind may be reacting to unpredictability rather than genuine compatibility. The constant uncertainty keeps them emotionally alert, making the connection difficult to forget. This pattern is especially powerful for people who have experienced inconsistent love in the past. Emotional instability feels strangely familiar, so they mistake the emotional tension for chemistry. Calm, secure relationships may even feel less exciting because they do not produce the same emotional rush. The darker side is that inconsistent affection can create emotional dependence. Someone may continue chasing a relationship that repeatedly hurts them because they become addicted to the relief that follows each period of distance. They begin believing the emotional highs are proof of deep love while overlooking the emotional pain that created those highs in the first place. Real chemistry grows through trust, emotional safety, and mutual understanding. What feels like irresistible attraction is sometimes nothing more than the emotional roller coaster created by inconsistency, leaving the heart convinced it has found destiny when it has actually become trapped in uncertainty. Coldness can trigger a need to prove worth. Coldness can trigger a need to prove worth because emotional withdrawal often awakens hidden insecurities. When someone who was once warm suddenly becomes distant, less affectionate, or emotionally unavailable, the other person may not simply feel disappointed. They may begin questioning their own value, wondering what changed and whether they are somehow no longer enough. The mind naturally searches for explanations. Instead of assuming the other person's behavior reflects their own issues, many people immediately look inward. They replay conversations, examine their actions, and search for mistakes that might explain the emotional distance. The relationship quietly shifts from enjoying each other to trying to earn back affection. This can create an unhealthy cycle. The colder one person becomes, the harder the other may work. They become more attentive, more patient, and more willing to sacrifice their own needs in the hope that the warmth will return. Every small sign of affection feels like proof they are making progress, encouraging them to keep trying. People with low self-esteem or a history of rejection are especially vulnerable to this pattern. They may believe that if they can finally make the emotionally distant person love them consistently, it will prove they are worthy of love after all. The relationship becomes a test of their value instead of a source of mutual happiness. The darker side is that some people knowingly use emotional coldness to create dependence. They withhold affection, making the other person work harder for approval and attention. Over time, the chase becomes less about genuine connection and more about escaping feelings of inadequacy. What appears to be deep devotion may actually be the desperate attempt to silence old insecurities. The person is not only trying to win someone's love, they are trying to prove to themselves that they were never unworthy of receiving it in the first place. People repeat painful patterns and call it attraction. People repeat painful patterns and call it attraction because the mind is naturally drawn toward what feels familiar, even when that familiarity comes from emotional pain. Many people believe they are following their heart, when in reality, they are repeating relationship dynamics they learned long before they understood what healthy love looked like. The brain often mistakes familiarity for safety. Someone who grew up around emotional distance, inconsistency, criticism, or rejection may unconsciously seek similar experiences in adulthood. When they meet a person who triggers those old emotions, the connection feels strangely powerful. They call it chemistry because it feels intense, but what they are really experiencing is recognition. This pattern is difficult to notice because it feels natural. The person may repeatedly choose emotionally unavailable partners, tolerate disrespect, or chase inconsistent affection without understanding why. Each relationship seems different, yet the emotional outcome remains remarkably similar. They are not choosing new people. They are reliving old emotional experiences with different faces. Over time, the pain itself begins to feel meaningful. They believe that if the relationship requires endless effort, sacrifice, and emotional struggle, it must be worth fighting for. The familiar discomfort becomes confused with genuine love because it matches what their nervous system has always known. The darker side is that unresolved emotional wounds quietly guide future choices. Instead of seeking peace, the person keeps returning to relationships that reopen the same pain, hoping this time the ending will finally be different. Unfortunately, the pattern often repeats because the wound, not the relationship, is directing the attraction. What feels like destiny may simply be an old emotional script playing once again. The heart believes it has found something special, while the mind is unknowingly following a path it has walked many times before, hoping that this version of the story will finally bring the healing it never received. You may resemble someone whose approval they lacked. You may resemble someone whose approval they lacked because the human mind often connects present relationships with unresolved experiences from the past. Without realizing it, a person may see qualities in you that remind them of someone whose love, acceptance, or recognition they desperately wanted but never fully received. This resemblance does not have to be physical. It may be your confidence, personality, emotional distance, voice, or even the way you communicate. Something about you awakens an old emotional memory. Suddenly, the desire to gain your approval becomes much stronger than the situation alone can explain. The person may begin investing unusual amounts of energy into the relationship. They try harder to impress you, seek your validation, and become deeply affected by your opinions. Your praise feels incredibly rewarding, while your disappointment feels unusually painful. They are responding not only to you, but also to the unresolved emotional wound your presence has quietly awakened. This pattern often develops in people who grew up seeking approval from emotionally distant parents, authority figures, or former partners. Because that need was never fully satisfied, the mind continues searching for another opportunity to finally receive the acceptance it missed. Your approval begins to represent emotional healing instead of simple attraction. The darker side is that they may become attached to what you symbolize rather than who you truly are. They overlook incompatibility, ignore warning signs, and keep chasing your attention because they believe being accepted by you will finally erase an old feeling of not being enough. What appears to be deep romantic interest may actually be an attempt to heal a much older wound. They are not only hoping you will choose them, they are hoping that your approval will succeed where someone else's never did, finally giving them the acceptance they have been searching for far longer than they realize. Familiar pain can feel safer than peace. Familiar pain can feel safer than peace because the human mind often trusts what it already knows, even when it causes suffering. If someone has spent years surrounded by emotional inconsistency, rejection, criticism, or instability, those experiences become familiar. Later in life, peaceful relationships may feel strange simply because they are unfamiliar. The brain is designed to recognize patterns. It does not automatically choose what is healthiest. It often chooses what feels predictable. A person who grew up chasing affection may feel uncomfortable when love is freely given. Instead of relaxing, they may become suspicious, believing that something must eventually go wrong. This is why some people repeatedly return to relationships that hurt them. The emotional tension feels strangely comfortable because it matches what they have always known. They mistake anxiety for excitement and emotional instability for passion. Calm relationships can even seem boring because their nervous system has become accustomed to emotional chaos. Over time, the person may unconsciously sabotage healthy connections while holding tightly to unhealthy ones. They are not choosing pain because they enjoy suffering. They are choosing what their mind recognizes as familiar, believing it is somehow safer than stepping into something completely different. The darker side is that this pattern can keep people trapped for years. They continue chasing emotionally unavailable partners, accepting inconsistent affection, and tolerating disrespect because peace feels unfamiliar. Every painful relationship reinforces the belief that love is supposed to hurt. What feels like irresistible attraction may actually be the comfort of repetition. The person is not falling in love with the pain itself. They are falling into an emotional pattern their mind has learned to survive. Until that pattern is understood and healed, familiar suffering may continue feeling more trustworthy than the peace they have always deserved. Availability may feel less exciting than uncertainty. Availability may feel less exciting than uncertainty because the human brain is naturally drawn to mystery, anticipation, and the possibility of gain. When someone is consistently available, emotionally open, and easy to understand, the mind quickly adapts to that stability. But when affection feels uncertain, every interaction carries emotional weight, making the relationship seem more exciting than it actually is. This happens because uncertainty keeps the brain engaged. If someone replies unpredictably, gives mixed signals, or remains emotionally difficult to read, the mind stays busy searching for answers. Every message becomes important. Every moment of attention feels like a reward. The relationship begins occupying far more mental space than a stable connection usually would. Many people mistake this heightened emotional activity for chemistry. They believe they cannot stop thinking about the person because the attraction is unusually strong. In reality, they may simply be reacting to uncertainty. Their mind is trying to solve a puzzle, and that constant search creates the illusion of deeper feelings. People who grew up with inconsistent affection are especially vulnerable to this pattern. Emotional uncertainty feels familiar, so steady love may seem too quiet or predictable. Instead of appreciating peace, they may mistake emotional chaos for passion because it produces a stronger emotional response. The darker side is that some people deliberately create uncertainty to increase pursuit. They become emotionally inconsistent, delay affection, or remain difficult to read because they know unpredictability can keep someone emotionally attached. The relationship becomes driven by anticipation instead of trust. True love does not depend on uncertainty to stay meaningful. Healthy relationships may feel calmer because they are built on security rather than confusion. What seems less exciting at first often provides the stability that allows real intimacy to grow, while uncertainty may create excitement without ever creating genuine emotional safety or lasting connection. Some distrust affection that comes easily. Some distrust affection that comes easily because their past has taught them that love usually comes with conditions, effort, or emotional pain. When someone offers genuine kindness, consistency, and acceptance without making them struggle for it, they may become suspicious instead of grateful. Deep down, it feels too different from what they have always known. This reaction often begins early in life. If affection was unpredictable, earned through achievement, or regularly withdrawn, the mind learns to believe that love must be worked for. As adults, relationships that feel calm and secure can seem unfamiliar. Instead of feeling safe, they may wonder what the other person really wants or when the kindness will suddenly disappear. The brain often mistakes familiarity for truth. If emotional struggle has always been part of love, effortless affection can feel unrealistic. They may question sincere compliments, doubt genuine interest, or assume hidden motives where none exist. The relationship feels confusing simply because it lacks the emotional tension they expect. Over time, they may pull away from healthy partners while feeling drawn toward emotionally unavailable people. The difficult relationship feels more believable because it matches their past experiences. They unconsciously trust what hurts them more than what brings them peace. The darker side is that this pattern can keep someone trapped in unhealthy relationships for years. They reject stability because it feels unfamiliar and chase inconsistency because it feels normal. Without realizing it, they begin confusing emotional difficulty with emotional authenticity. What appears to be a lack of attraction is often a lack of trust in healthy love. The person is not rejecting affection because they do not want it. They are rejecting it because their past has convinced them that real love should never arrive so easily. Until those old beliefs are challenged, peace may continue feeling less believable than pain. Silence can increase pursuit. Silence can increase pursuit because the human mind struggles with unanswered questions. When communication suddenly stops or becomes noticeably reduced, the absence of words often becomes louder than any explanation. Instead of moving on, many people become emotionally preoccupied with understanding what the silence means. The brain naturally seeks closure. If someone who was once warm and responsive suddenly becomes quiet, the mind begins filling the empty space with possibilities. They replay past conversations, question their own behavior, and wonder whether something has changed. The silence creates uncertainty, and uncertainty keeps the emotional connection alive. This is why some people become more determined after communication disappears. They send another message, check their phone more often, or think about the relationship throughout the day. They are not always chasing because their feelings have grown stronger. Often, they are chasing clarity because the silence has left the emotional story unfinished. Silence also gives imagination room to grow. Without clear answers, people create their own explanations. They may assume you are losing interest, testing them, protecting your feelings, or secretly hoping they will try harder. Every possibility keeps their attention focused on you instead of allowing them to move forward. The darker side is that silence can be used as a form of emotional control. Someone may intentionally withdraw communication, knowing that uncertainty can make the other person become more invested. Instead of resolving problems honestly, they allow confusion to create emotional dependence. Healthy silence is different. It comes from respecting boundaries, taking time to think, or creating space when needed, not from manipulating emotions. When silence is used to create uncertainty, people often mistake the emotional discomfort it produces for deeper attraction. In reality, they are not always chasing love. They are chasing the answers that the silence continues to withhold. Restraint leaves room for curiosity. Restraint leaves room for curiosity because people are naturally interested in what is not immediately revealed. When someone does not rush to share every thought, emotion, or detail about themselves, others begin wondering what remains beneath the surface. Instead of feeling distant, that quiet self-control can make the connection feel more intriguing. The human mind enjoys discovery. When everything is revealed too quickly, there is little left to explore. But when someone allows their personality to unfold naturally over time, each conversation offers something new. That gradual process keeps interest alive because the relationship feels like an ongoing discovery rather than a finished story. Restraint also communicates confidence. It shows that you are comfortable with silence, do not feel pressured to impress everyone, and are willing to let trust develop at its own pace. People often find this attractive because it suggests emotional security instead of emotional neediness. Curiosity grows when there is enough information to spark interest, but not enough to satisfy it completely. Someone may begin paying closer attention to your words, your reactions, and your values because they genuinely want to understand you better. Your quiet nature encourages them to invest emotionally instead of handing them every answer immediately. The darker side is that some people mistake manipulation for restraint. They intentionally hide their feelings, play emotional games, or remain vague simply to appear mysterious. This creates confusion rather than genuine curiosity and often damages trust over time. Healthy restraint is not about pretending to be unavailable. It is about allowing connection to develop naturally without rushing intimacy. People remain interested because they sense there is real depth waiting to be discovered. The curiosity comes from authenticity, not performance, making every new layer of your personality feel earned rather than simply handed to them all at once. Refusing to chase can increase their investment. Refusing to chase can increase their investment because it changes the emotional balance of the relationship. When you do not beg for attention, constantly seek reassurance, or desperately try to keep someone interested, your actions communicate confidence and self-respect. Your attention begins to feel like a choice instead of a need. Many people are used to being pursued. They expect repeated messages, emotional pleading, or endless attempts to win them over. When those reactions never come, they often become curious. Instead of feeling certain of your interest, they begin wondering whether they have underestimated your value or whether they are the one who now risks losing the connection. This uncertainty can make them invest more emotionally. They may initiate conversations more often, pay closer attention to your behavior, or make greater efforts to earn your time. Your refusal to chase forces them to become more aware of your absence and the possibility that you may simply move on. The effect is strongest when your decision comes from genuine emotional security. You are not trying to punish them or manipulate their feelings. You simply understand that real relationships cannot be forced. That quiet confidence often makes your attention feel more valuable because it is given freely, not out of fear of being alone. The darker side is that some people use this idea as a manipulation tactic. They intentionally withdraw affection or ignore others to provoke pursuit. While this may create temporary interest, it often builds relationships based on anxiety instead of trust. Healthy detachment is different. It allows the other person the freedom to choose while protecting your own dignity. When someone realizes you will not sacrifice your self-respect to keep them, they often begin investing more because your presence no longer feels guaranteed. Your calm willingness to let go quietly reveals the value they risk losing. Value becomes clearer when you stop proving it. Value becomes clearer when you stop proving it because constant self-promotion often has the opposite effect. When someone continuously tries to convince others that they are attractive, successful, intelligent, or worthy of love, their confidence can appear dependent on outside approval. True value is often felt more strongly when it is quietly demonstrated instead of repeatedly explained. People naturally pay attention to those who seem comfortable with themselves. Someone who does not constantly seek validation communicates emotional security. Their confidence feels genuine because it is not built on convincing everyone else. Instead of asking to be believed, they allow their character and actions to speak for them. This changes how others respond. Rather than being told why they should admire you, they begin discovering your qualities for themselves. Every act of kindness, every display of integrity, and every confident decision becomes more meaningful because it feels authentic instead of performed. The less you try to prove your worth, the more noticeable it often becomes. The effect is especially powerful in dating. If you stop chasing approval, over-explaining your intentions, or trying to impress at every opportunity, people may begin investing more attention in understanding who you really are. Your quiet confidence creates curiosity because it suggests you already know your own value. The darker side is that some people only recognize your worth after you stop seeking their recognition. They become interested not because you changed, but because your emotional independence removed the certainty they once relied on. Losing easy access to your attention forces them to reconsider what they may have overlooked. Real value does not need constant advertisement. It becomes most visible when it is expressed through consistent actions, healthy boundaries, and quiet self-respect. When you stop trying to convince people of your worth, you give them the opportunity to recognize it for themselves. Withdrawal can shift the power balance. Withdrawal can shift the power balance because emotional dynamics often change the moment one person stops pursuing the other. When someone who is always available suddenly becomes less dependent, more reserved, or emotionally self-sufficient, the relationship no longer follows the pattern the other person has come to expect. That unexpected change often forces a reassessment of the connection. This happens because certainty disappears. If someone believed your attention would always be available, your withdrawal introduces the possibility of loss. The emotional balance begins to shift. Instead of you wondering whether they still care, they may begin questioning whether they are losing access to someone they had taken for granted. The mind naturally notices change more than consistency. Your absence becomes more visible than your presence once was. Small things they barely noticed before, your messages, your time, your affection, your emotional support, suddenly become more valuable because they are no longer guaranteed. What felt ordinary now feels scarce. This change can increase their emotional investment. They may become more attentive, initiate conversations, or make greater efforts to reconnect. However, this does not always mean their feelings have suddenly deepened. Sometimes they are reacting to the loss of certainty rather than the loss of you. The darker side is that withdrawal can be used as a tool of manipulation. Some people intentionally pull away to create anxiety, hoping the other person will chase harder. This creates relationships built on emotional imbalance instead of mutual trust. Healthy withdrawal is different. It happens when someone stops overextending themselves, protects their emotional well-being, or refuses to remain in an unhealthy dynamic. In those moments, the power shifts naturally because self-respect replaces emotional dependence. The other person is finally forced to decide whether they truly value the relationship or simply valued having guaranteed access to your attention all along. Emotional independence weakens their control. Emotional independence weakens their control because people lose influence over you the moment your happiness no longer depends on their approval, attention, or affection. When someone realizes they cannot easily manipulate your emotions, they often begin seeing you very differently. Your calm confidence becomes difficult to influence, and that alone changes the entire relationship. Many relationships quietly revolve around emotional dependence. One person learns that a compliment can change your mood, silence can create anxiety, or affection can make you overlook poor treatment. Once you become emotionally independent, those same tactics lose their power. You stop reacting automatically and begin responding with intention. This unexpected change often creates curiosity. Someone who once felt in control may wonder why their usual behavior no longer affects you. If you remain peaceful after rejection, calm during conflict, or confident without constant reassurance, they may begin paying closer attention because the emotional dynamic has shifted. Emotional independence also makes your attention feel more valuable. When you choose to spend time with someone, it is clear that you are doing so because you genuinely want to, not because you fear being alone. That freedom gives your affection greater meaning because it comes from choice rather than emotional need. The darker side is that some people become more determined when they realize they can no longer control you. They may increase their efforts, test your boundaries, or create emotional situations designed to provoke a reaction. Their pursuit is no longer about connection. It is about recovering the influence they have lost. True emotional independence is not about becoming cold or distant. It is about caring deeply without surrendering your peace. When your emotions are guided by your values instead of another person's behavior, you quietly remove the power others once had over your inner world, and that confidence is often impossible to ignore. Your freedom makes losing you feel real. Your freedom makes losing you feel real because people value what they know they cannot keep by force. When someone realizes that you are emotionally capable of walking away, living happily on your own, and choosing peace over unhealthy attachment, the relationship no longer feels guaranteed. The possibility of losing you suddenly becomes real. Many people become comfortable when they believe someone will always stay. They stop appreciating small gestures, become less attentive, or assume the relationship will survive regardless of how they behave. But when they recognize that you have the strength to leave if necessary, their perspective often changes. What once felt permanent now feels fragile. This shift creates emotional urgency. They may begin paying closer attention to your needs, communicating more openly, or making greater efforts to protect the relationship. Your freedom reminds them that love is not something they automatically deserve. It is something that continues through mutual care and respect. Freedom also communicates self-worth. It shows that your identity is not dependent on one relationship and that you refuse to sacrifice your well-being simply to avoid being alone. That quiet confidence often makes your presence feel more valuable because it is based on choice rather than fear. The darker side is that some people only begin appreciating someone after realizing they can no longer control the outcome. Instead of valuing the relationship while it is healthy, they wait until the possibility of losing it forces them to act. Their sudden effort is driven more by fear than genuine emotional growth. Real love grows when two people freely choose each other every day. When your freedom makes losing you feel possible, it reminds others that your presence is never guaranteed. It is a gift that exists because you continue choosing the relationship, not because you are trapped by it or afraid to walk away. People chase those who enjoy life alone. People chase those who enjoy life alone because genuine contentment is naturally attractive. When someone sees that you can enjoy your own company, pursue your goals, and find happiness without depending on constant attention, your presence begins to feel like a choice rather than a necessity. That freedom often makes others value your time more. Many people unconsciously expect others to seek validation through relationships. When they meet someone who is emotionally fulfilled without needing to be rescued or completed, it challenges that expectation. Instead of appearing lonely, you appear secure. Instead of chasing approval, you simply enjoy your own life, and that quiet confidence stands out. This creates curiosity. They begin wondering what gives you such peace, what makes you so emotionally grounded, and why you do not seem afraid of being alone. Your independence suggests that anyone who becomes part of your life has been genuinely chosen rather than emotionally needed. People also tend to respect what is not driven by desperation. When you are capable of walking away from unhealthy situations and continuing to enjoy your life, your attention feels more valuable. Every conversation, act of affection, and shared moment carries greater meaning because it comes from freedom instead of dependence. The darker side is that some people become interested only after realizing they are no longer the center of your world. They chase because your independence threatens their need to feel important or in control. Their pursuit is motivated by the fear of being unnecessary rather than by genuine appreciation. Healthy independence is not emotional isolation. It is the ability to build a fulfilling life with or without a relationship. When people see that your happiness does not depend on them, they often begin appreciating your presence more deeply because they understand that being part of your life is a privilege, not an obligation or emotional requirement. Boundaries make access feel earned. Boundaries make access feel earned because they communicate that your time, energy, and emotions are valuable. When you do not allow everyone unlimited access to your life, people begin understanding that closeness with you is built through trust, respect, and consistency rather than expectation. Your attention feels meaningful because it is given with intention. Healthy boundaries also reveal self-respect. They show that you know what behavior you will accept and what behavior you will not tolerate. Instead of saying yes to everything out of fear of losing someone, you protect your peace. That quiet confidence often makes others take both you and the relationship more seriously. When access is not automatic, people naturally appreciate it more. A meaningful conversation, personal vulnerability, or your willingness to spend time together feels significant because it reflects trust that has developed over time. The relationship grows gradually instead of being built on immediate emotional dependence. Boundaries also encourage healthier behavior. Someone who genuinely values you understands that respect, honesty, and consistency are the way to earn greater closeness. Rather than relying on charm or empty promises, they recognize that lasting access to your life comes through actions that match their words. The darker side is that some people see boundaries as obstacles instead of expressions of self-worth. Rather than respecting your limits, they become determined to push past them simply to prove they can. Their pursuit is driven by control, not connection, and they often lose interest once the challenge disappears. Healthy boundaries are never about making people chase. They exist to protect emotional well-being and build relationships on mutual respect. When someone earns greater access to your life through trust and consistency, the connection feels stronger because it is based on genuine character instead of emotional pressure or manipulation. Firm limits. Make affection feel intentional. Firm limits make affection feel intentional because they show that your kindness is a conscious choice, not something you give to everyone without thought. When you have clear boundaries, your attention, trust, and affection become more meaningful because people know they come from genuine respect rather than emotional pressure or fear of being alone. Many people confuse endless availability with love. They believe saying yes to everything proves commitment. In reality, someone who never protects their own needs may eventually give affection out of obligation instead of genuine desire. Firm limits prevent that from happening. They ensure that every act of care is freely chosen instead of emotionally forced. This changes how others experience your affection. A compliment feels more sincere, because it is not casually given to everyone. Your time feels more valuable because you protect it. Your trust carries greater weight because people understand it has been built through consistent actions rather than handed out immediately. Firm limits also communicate emotional maturity. They show that you are capable of caring deeply while still respecting yourself. You can say no without guilt, walk away from unhealthy behavior, and refuse relationships that require sacrificing your peace. That balance often earns more respect than endless accommodation ever could. The darker side is that some people mistake firm limits for emotional distance. They become frustrated because they cannot receive immediate access to your time, attention, or vulnerability. Rather than respecting your boundaries, they see them as barriers to overcome, revealing that they are more interested in control than connection. Healthy limits do not reduce love. They give it greater meaning. When someone knows your affection comes from genuine choice instead of obligation, every moment of closeness feels more authentic. Your love is no longer automatic or expected. It becomes something shared with intention, built on trust, mutual respect, and the freedom to choose each other every single day. People may test what they fear needing. People may test what they fear needing because dependence makes many people feel emotionally vulnerable. When they begin caring deeply about someone, the possibility of losing that person becomes frightening. Instead of admitting that fear, they often create small tests to see whether the relationship is truly safe before allowing themselves to trust completely. These tests are usually unconscious rather than planned. A person may become slightly distant to see if you notice, delay responding to messages to see if you will reach out, or express doubt just to observe how you react. They are not always trying to manipulate you. Often, they are searching for reassurance without directly asking for it. This behavior usually comes from fear rather than confidence. The more important you become, the greater the emotional risk feels. They worry that needing you too much could eventually lead to rejection or disappointment. By testing the relationship, they hope to protect themselves from future pain before becoming fully attached. People who have experienced betrayal, abandonment, or inconsistent love are especially likely to behave this way. They struggle to believe that someone will remain consistent, so they look for proof instead. Every response becomes evidence that either confirms or challenges their fears about intimacy. The darker side is that constant testing can quietly damage healthy relationships. If someone repeatedly creates unnecessary conflict, emotional distance, or uncertainty just to measure your feelings, trust slowly begins to disappear. The relationship becomes focused on passing tests instead of building genuine connection. Healthy relationships do not require endless emotional experiments. Real security grows through honest communication, consistency, and mutual trust. When someone constantly tests what they fear needing, they may unknowingly push away the very person they were hoping would prove that love could finally be safe, reliable, and different from everything they experienced before. Refusing to chase can unsettle them. Refusing to chase can unsettle them because it disrupts the emotional dynamic they expected. If someone is used to others pursuing them, seeking their approval, or constantly trying to win their attention, your decision to step back instead of chasing can leave them confused. They suddenly lose the reassurance that they were relying on without even realizing it. Many people unconsciously expect emotional pursuit. They assume that if they become distant, the other person will reach out. If they delay replying, someone will wait. If they withdraw affection, the relationship will become even more one-sided. When none of those reactions happen, they are forced to question their assumptions. This unexpected response often creates curiosity. They begin wondering why you are not reacting like everyone else. Have you lost interest? Are you emotionally stronger than they expected? Have they misunderstood your feelings? Those unanswered questions can keep your presence in their mind long after the interaction has ended. Your refusal to chase also communicates self-respect. It shows that your emotional well-being does not depend on convincing someone to stay. You are willing to give effort, but not at the cost of your dignity. That quiet confidence often makes your attention feel more valuable because it is no longer guaranteed. The darker side is that some people become more interested only because they have lost the emotional control they once believed they had. Their pursuit is driven by discomfort rather than genuine appreciation. They want to restore the old dynamic instead of building a healthier one. Real confidence is not about making someone chase you. It is about knowing your worth well enough to stop chasing people who have already shown you where they stand. When you refuse to pursue someone at the expense of your self-respect, you reveal a strength that many people notice only after it is no longer easily available. Calmness can threaten someone's control. Calmness can threaten someone's control because emotional manipulation depends on emotional reactions. When a person realizes they cannot easily upset you, pressure you, or provoke you into acting impulsively, they often lose one of their strongest sources of influence. Your emotional stability quietly changes the balance of the relationship. Many controlling people expect predictable responses. They assume criticism will make you defensive, silence will make you anxious, or affection will make you overlook poor behavior. When you remain calm instead, those expectations no longer work. Instead of reacting emotionally, you respond thoughtfully, making it much harder for anyone to guide your decisions through your feelings. This unexpected composure often creates curiosity and frustration at the same time. Someone may wonder why their words no longer affect you or why you seem so peaceful in situations that once unsettled you. Your calmness forces them to confront the fact that they are no longer controlling the emotional direction of the relationship. Calmness also signals confidence. It shows that your emotions are guided by your own values rather than another person's approval or behavior. You do not need to win every argument, defend every accusation, or respond to every provocation. That quiet self-control often earns more respect than emotional intensity ever could. The darker side is that some people react by increasing their efforts to break your composure. They may provoke, criticize, or create unnecessary drama simply to prove they can still affect you. Their goal is no longer solving the problem, but restoring the influence they believe they have lost. True calmness is not emotional numbness. It is the ability to remain grounded when others expect you to fall apart. When someone realizes they can no longer control your emotions, they often discover that the greatest power you possess is not over them, but over yourself. Some chase power, not love. Some chase power, not love. Because for certain people, relationships are less about emotional connection and more about influence. They are not seeking closeness, trust, or mutual understanding. Instead, they are seeking the feeling of being able to affect another person's emotions, decisions, and behavior. The relationship becomes a source of control rather than genuine intimacy. This often begins with validation. Knowing that someone is constantly thinking about them, waiting for their messages, or seeking their approval gives them a sense of importance. The more emotional influence they have, the more powerful they feel. Your attention becomes proof that they can shape your emotional world whenever they choose. This is why some people lose interest after gaining your affection. The pursuit was exciting because it offered a challenge. Once they know they have your heart, the emotional reward shifts from connection to control. They may begin creating distance, giving mixed signals, or testing your loyalty simply to confirm that their influence remains intact. People who chase power often confuse being needed with being loved. They feel secure when they know someone depends on them emotionally, even if the relationship itself lacks honesty, consistency, or respect. Their satisfaction comes from maintaining influence rather than building trust. The darker side is that this behavior can quietly become manipulation. They may use affection as a reward, silence as punishment, or unpredictability as a way of keeping you emotionally attached. The goal is not mutual happiness, but preserving the emotional advantage they believe they have. Real love creates freedom, not control. It allows both people to feel secure without fear or manipulation. When someone is chasing power instead of connection, they are not trying to build a relationship. They are trying to build a position of influence where your emotions become proof of their importance rather than an opportunity to genuinely care for another person. Attention becomes desirable when no longer guaranteed. Attention becomes desirable when it is no longer guaranteed because people often appreciate something most after realizing they could lose it. When your messages, affection, time, or emotional support are always available, they can slowly become expected rather than appreciated. But the moment that certainty disappears, your attention begins to feel far more valuable. The human mind is highly sensitive to loss. People often react more strongly to losing something than to having it in the first place. If someone who was once consistently present becomes less available, the emotional shift immediately captures attention. What once felt ordinary now feels rare, and rarity naturally increases perceived value. This change often creates greater emotional investment. The person may begin thinking about you more, reaching out more often, or reflecting on everything they previously overlooked. They notice the conversations they no longer have, the support they once received, and the comfort your presence quietly provided. Your absence highlights your importance in a way your constant presence never could. The effect becomes stronger when they believed your attention would always be there. Certainty can create complacency, but uncertainty forces awareness. Once they realize they can no longer assume your availability, they begin treating your time and affection as something precious instead of something guaranteed. The darker side is that some people deliberately remove attention to create emotional dependence. They know that sudden absence can trigger anxiety and make the other person chase harder. Instead of strengthening the relationship, this creates emotional imbalance built on fear of loss rather than trust. Healthy relationships do not rely on manufactured scarcity. Genuine appreciation comes from mutual respect, not emotional games. However, when your attention is no longer guaranteed because you have chosen self-respect over constant availability, people often begin recognizing its true value. They realize too late that what they once treated as ordinary was something deeply meaningful all along. Jealousy can exist without commitment. Jealousy can exist without commitment because the desire to possess someone's attention is not always the same as the desire to build a relationship. A person may have no intention of committing to you, yet still feel uncomfortable when someone else begins receiving the attention they once enjoyed. The emotion is often driven by attachment, ego, or fear of losing influence rather than genuine love. This happens because people naturally become attached to what feels familiar. Even without exclusivity, they may grow accustomed to your time, affection, or emotional availability. Once that attention begins shifting elsewhere, they experience a sense of loss. They suddenly notice your value only after realizing someone else may appreciate it instead. Jealousy can also be rooted in control. Some people do not want a committed relationship, but they still want to know they have a special place in your life. Seeing you become emotionally invested in someone else challenges that belief. They may become more attentive, more affectionate, or more possessive, even though they never offered the commitment they now seem to expect from you. This emotional contradiction often confuses the other person. The sudden interest feels like love, but it may simply be a reaction to losing exclusive access. The fear is not always about losing the relationship. Sometimes it is about losing the comfort of knowing they could have your attention whenever they wanted it. The darker side is that jealousy without commitment can keep people trapped in emotionally confusing situations. One person sends possessive signals while refusing to define the relationship, leaving the other caught between hope and uncertainty. Real commitment is shown through consistency, responsibility, and mutual choice. Jealousy alone is not proof of love. Sometimes it simply reveals that someone misses the attention, validation, or emotional influence they once had, even if they were never willing to truly build a future with you. People may fear others choosing you. People may fear others choosing you because the possibility of losing you to someone else often changes how they perceive your value. When they realize you are desired, respected, or appreciated by others, they may suddenly become aware that your attention is not guaranteed. The relationship no longer feels secure, and that realization can create unexpected urgency. This reaction is rooted in the fear of missing an opportunity. Someone who once assumed they had unlimited time may begin acting differently when they see another person showing interest in you. They become more attentive, more expressive, or more emotionally available because they no longer believe they can wait indefinitely. The thought of someone else choosing you makes the possibility of losing you feel real. People also compare themselves to potential rivals. They begin wondering whether someone else is more attractive, more successful, or more compatible than they are. These comparisons can increase insecurity and motivate them to invest more effort into the relationship. What they once delayed suddenly becomes a priority. This pattern is especially common when someone has taken your presence for granted. They only begin recognizing your value after seeing that others recognize it too. Your worth has not changed, but their awareness of it has. The darker side is that this fear is not always motivated by love. Some people simply struggle with the idea of someone else having what they believed would always remain available to them. They become possessive without offering commitment, hoping to keep your attention while avoiding real responsibility. Healthy love does not depend on competition to create appreciation. However, the possibility of someone else choosing you often forces people to confront what they truly feel. Sometimes they discover genuine affection. Other times, they discover they were only attached to the comfort of believing you would always be there whenever they decided they wanted you. Some chase access, not responsibility. Some chase access, not responsibility, because they enjoy the benefits of closeness without wanting the commitment that comes with it. They want your attention, affection, time, and emotional support, but they hesitate when it comes to loyalty, consistency, or accountability. To them, the excitement of having access is more appealing than the responsibility of maintaining a healthy relationship. This creates a confusing emotional dynamic. They pursue you with enthusiasm, seek your company, and make you feel important. But when deeper commitment is required, they become distant, avoid serious conversations, or refuse to define the relationship. They want the privileges of intimacy without accepting the obligations that true love demands. Many people mistake this pursuit for genuine affection. The constant attention feels flattering and the emotional intensity seems meaningful. However, there is a significant difference between wanting someone's presence and being willing to protect their heart. Access requires very little sacrifice. Responsibility requires consistency, honesty, and emotional maturity. This pattern often becomes clear when challenges appear. Someone chasing access may disappear during difficult moments, avoid uncomfortable conversations, or withdraw when real effort is needed. They enjoy the relationship when it serves them, but they struggle when love requires patience, compromise, or accountability. The darker side is that this behavior can keep another person emotionally invested for a long time. They continue hoping commitment will eventually follow because the attention feels real. Meanwhile, the other person enjoys the emotional benefits without accepting the responsibilities that should naturally accompany them. Real love is not measured by how eagerly someone enters your life, but by how consistently they remain present when responsibility begins. Anyone can chase access when it feels exciting. The true test of character is whether they are willing to carry the weight of commitment after the excitement fades and the relationship begins requiring genuine effort, sacrifice, and care. Desire does not equal emotional maturity. Desire does not equal emotional maturity because wanting someone intensely is very different from knowing how to love them well. A person may feel overwhelming attraction, think about you constantly, and do everything possible to win your attention, yet still lack the emotional skills needed to build a healthy relationship. Strong desire is driven by emotion, but emotional maturity is shown through consistent behavior. Anyone can express passion during exciting moments. Emotional maturity appears when misunderstandings happen, boundaries are tested, and difficult conversations become necessary. It is revealed through patience, honesty, accountability, and respect, not simply through intense feelings. This is why some relationships begin with extraordinary chemistry but quickly become emotionally exhausting. The attraction is real, but the ability to communicate, compromise, and handle conflict is missing. One person may love deeply while still reacting with jealousy, manipulation, avoidance, or emotional instability because desire alone has not taught them how to love responsibly. People often mistake intensity for readiness. They assume that because someone wants them badly, they must also be prepared to protect the relationship. In reality, emotional maturity requires self-awareness, discipline, and the willingness to put another person's well-being alongside your own. Those qualities develop over time and cannot be replaced by passion. The darker side is that intense desire can sometimes hide emotional immaturity. A person may chase relentlessly, make dramatic promises, or become possessive, believing these behaviors prove love. In truth, they may simply be acting from insecurity, fear of loss, or the need for validation. Real love requires more than powerful emotions. It requires the ability to remain kind during conflict, loyal during temptation, and respectful during disappointment. Desire may bring two people together, but emotional maturity is what determines whether they can build something that survives after the excitement begins to fade. Some enjoy conquest more than connection. Some enjoy conquest more than connection because the excitement of winning someone's affection can feel more rewarding to them than the responsibility of building a lasting relationship. They are motivated by the thrill of the chase, the satisfaction of being chosen, and the feeling of accomplishment that comes from earning someone's attention. Once that goal is achieved, their interest often begins to fade. This happens because the pursuit provides emotional stimulation. Every message, every challenge, and every small sign of progress creates excitement. The uncertainty keeps them engaged, making the chase feel like an adventure. But once the relationship becomes stable and predictable, the emotional reward they were seeking begins to disappear. For these people, attraction is often tied to achievement rather than intimacy. They enjoy proving they can make someone fall in love, especially if that person seemed difficult to win over. The relationship becomes a personal victory instead of a meaningful, emotional bond. Their focus quietly shifts from getting to know you to simply getting you. This can leave the other person deeply confused. During the pursuit, they feel admired, appreciated, and intensely desired. But after commitment begins, the enthusiasm slowly fades. The affection that once seemed effortless becomes inconsistent because the challenge that fueled their interest no longer exists. The darker side is that this pattern can cause repeated emotional harm. Someone may continue moving from one relationship to another, constantly seeking the excitement of new pursuit while avoiding the vulnerability and responsibility that real love requires. They confuse novelty with happiness and excitement with emotional depth. True connection begins after the chase is over. It is built through trust, consistency, sacrifice, and mutual growth. Anyone can pursue when the outcome is uncertain, but only someone emotionally mature remains just as committed after they have already won your heart. Validation can end the chase. Validation can end the chase because for some people, the pursuit was never truly about building a relationship. It was about proving they were attractive, desirable, or worthy of attention. Once they receive the reassurance they were seeking, the emotional urgency that drove their pursuit often disappears. This happens because validation satisfies an internal need. During the chase, every conversation, compliment, and sign of interest feels like evidence that they are succeeding. They become highly motivated because they are trying to answer a private question: am I enough? When you finally choose them, that question is temporarily answered, and the excitement that fueled their pursuit begins to fade. Many people mistake this intense effort for deep love. The person seemed completely devoted, always making time, sending thoughtful messages, and showing endless enthusiasm. But once they receive confirmation that your feelings are real, they may become less attentive. Their goal was to win your affection, not necessarily to nurture the relationship afterward. This pattern often leaves the other person confused. They wonder what changed, believing they must have done something wrong. In reality, the biggest change was that the emotional mission had already been completed. The chase ended because the validation they were seeking had already been received. The darker side is that someone who depends on validation may repeat this pattern in multiple relationships. They continue searching for new people who can make them feel desired because the emotional satisfaction never lasts. Instead of developing lasting self-worth, they rely on repeated romantic victories to feel valuable. Real love grows stronger after mutual affection is confirmed. It does not disappear once validation is received. When someone's interest fades the moment they know they have your heart, it often reveals that they were chasing reassurance more than they were chasing a genuine, lifelong connection. Distance allows fantasy to survive. Distance allows fantasy to survive because the less people see of reality, the more space their imagination has to take over. When someone is no longer part of your everyday life, the mind begins filling the silence with idealized memories, imagined conversations, and possibilities that never actually happened. Over time, the fantasy can become stronger than the truth. This happens because memory is selective. The brain naturally holds on to emotionally meaningful moments while allowing painful details to fade. Arguments become less vivid, disappointments lose their emotional weight, and happy memories begin to shine more brightly. The relationship slowly transforms into something more perfect than it ever truly was. Distance also removes new information. Without seeing the other person's flaws, habits, or daily behavior, there is nothing to challenge the idealized image. The mind is free to create a version of them that perfectly fits its hopes and desires. Every unanswered question becomes an opportunity for imagination to complete the story. This can make someone feel deeply attached long after the relationship has ended. They believe they miss the person, but they may actually be missing the version they created in their own mind. The fantasy feels real because it has been protected from reality by time and distance. The darker side is that people sometimes return to unhealthy relationships because they have fallen in love with the memory instead of the truth. They remember how they wished the relationship felt, not how it actually did. Reality is quietly replaced by hope. Real love grows stronger through knowing someone completely. Fantasy grows stronger through absence. When distance removes reality, imagination often takes its place, creating an emotional picture that becomes harder to let go of with every passing day. Sometimes the person being chased no longer exists outside the mind that continues to remember them. Some chase closeness, then fear vulnerability. Some chase closeness, then fear vulnerability because wanting love and feeling safe enough to receive it are not always the same thing. A person may desperately seek intimacy, affection, and emotional connection, but once the relationship becomes real, fear quietly replaces excitement. The closer they get, the more exposed they begin to feel. This happens because true intimacy requires vulnerability. At the beginning of a relationship, everything feels exciting and full of possibility. There is little emotional risk because neither person has invested deeply yet. But as trust grows, so does the possibility of rejection, disappointment, and heartbreak. For someone carrying old emotional wounds, that growing closeness can feel threatening instead of comforting. The person may begin pulling away without fully understanding why. They become less responsive, avoid serious conversations, or create emotional distance just as the relationship is becoming stronger. To the other person, this change feels confusing because the pursuit was so intense only a short time earlier. People who fear vulnerability often want love, but fear the emotional exposure that comes with it. They worry that if someone truly knows them, they may eventually be judged, abandoned, or hurt. Instead of risking that pain, they unconsciously create distance before the relationship becomes too deep. The darker side is that this pattern can repeat throughout many relationships. Someone continually chases intimacy, but retreats whenever genuine emotional closeness begins to develop. They mistake emotional safety for emotional danger because vulnerability has become associated with pain instead of connection. Real intimacy is built through honesty, trust, and emotional openness. It cannot grow where fear constantly interrupts closeness. What appears to be a loss of interest is often something much deeper. The person is not running from love itself. They are running from the emotional risk that real love inevitably requires, even while quietly longing for it more than anything else. Fantasy often feels safer than intimacy. Fantasy often feels safer than intimacy because imagination never rejects, disappoints, or exposes us in the way real relationships can. In fantasy, people can create the perfect partner, the perfect future, and the perfect emotional connection without facing the uncertainty that comes with loving another human being. The imagined relationship remains completely under their control. Real intimacy is different. It requires honesty, vulnerability, compromise, and the willingness to let another person see your flaws. That level of emotional openness can feel terrifying, especially for someone who has experienced betrayal, abandonment, or rejection. Instead of risking real pain, the mind sometimes chooses the safety of imagined possibilities. This is why some people become deeply attached to someone they barely know. They spend hours imagining conversations, future memories, and perfect moments that have never happened. The less they know about the person, the easier it becomes to fill the missing pieces with everything they secretly hope for. Fantasy also protects people from disappointment. As long as the relationship exists mostly in their imagination, it can never truly fail. Reality, however, eventually reveals imperfections, disagreements, and differences that fantasy never has to confront. The imagined version always feels easier to love than the real one. The darker side is that fantasy can quietly prevent genuine connection. Someone may reject healthy relationships because reality never feels as exciting as the perfect story they have created in their mind. They continue chasing an ideal that no real person can fully satisfy. True intimacy is not perfect, but it is real. It asks people to love someone completely, including their flaws and imperfections. Fantasy asks for nothing and promises everything. That is why it often feels safer. But while imagination can protect the heart from temporary pain, It can also prevent it from experiencing the genuine closeness it has always been searching for. Someone may want you without wanting responsibility. Someone may want you without wanting responsibility because desire and commitment are not the same thing. A person can genuinely enjoy your company, crave your attention, and feel strongly attracted to you while still avoiding the responsibility that comes with building a healthy relationship. They want the emotional rewards without accepting the emotional obligations. This often becomes visible over time. They enjoy late-night conversations, affectionate moments, and your emotional support, but hesitate when discussions about commitment, consistency, or the future arise. They may promise change without following through, avoid defining the relationship, or disappear whenever the connection begins requiring accountability. The difference lies in intention. Wanting someone is driven by emotion, while taking responsibility is driven by character. Responsibility means being dependable, communicating honestly, respecting boundaries, and remaining present even when the relationship becomes difficult. Someone who only wants the excitement of romance may struggle with these deeper responsibilities. This creates confusion because their affection can seem sincere. They may say all the right things, show intense interest, and make you feel deeply desired. Yet when real commitment requires sacrifice, patience, or emotional consistency, they begin pulling away. The relationship remains centered on what they receive rather than what they are willing to give. The darker side is that some people keep another person emotionally attached without ever intending to build a lasting future. They enjoy having access to your love while avoiding the responsibility of protecting your heart. This leaves the other person constantly hoping that commitment will eventually appear. Real love is measured by responsibility as much as emotion. Anyone can want someone during exciting moments, but lasting relationships are built by people who willingly carry the weight of trust, loyalty, and consistency. Wanting you may create the beginning of a relationship, but accepting responsibility is what allows genuine love to survive long after the excitement fades. Emotional highs can replace consistency. Emotional highs can replace consistency because intense feelings often distract people from noticing the absence of stability. When a relationship is filled with passionate reunions, exciting conversations, dramatic apologies, and unforgettable moments, those emotional peaks can become so powerful that they overshadow the lack of trust, reliability, and everyday care. The brain naturally remembers emotional extremes more vividly than quiet moments. A surprise declaration of love after days of silence can feel unforgettable. A passionate reunion after a painful argument can seem like proof that the relationship is extraordinary. The emotional intensity creates memories that are far stronger than the calm consistency healthy love usually provides. Over time, the person may begin chasing those emotional highs instead of seeking emotional security. They tolerate repeated disappointment because they believe another exciting moment is always waiting around the corner. Every painful period is endured with the hope that the next emotional high will make everything worthwhile. This pattern often creates confusion. The relationship feels deeply meaningful because the emotions are so intense. Yet outside those dramatic moments, there may be very little consistency, honesty, or emotional safety. The excitement hides the instability, making the connection appear stronger than it truly is. The darker side is that some people unconsciously create conflict because they become addicted to the emotional relief that follows reconciliation. Peace begins to feel unfamiliar, while emotional drama starts feeling necessary to keep the relationship alive. Without realizing it, they confuse emotional intensity with emotional depth. Real love is not sustained by occasional emotional highs. It is built through steady trust, reliable care, and consistent effort. While dramatic moments can feel unforgettable, they cannot replace the quiet security that allows two people to feel safe with each other every single day. Consistency may seem less exciting, but it is often the strongest evidence that love is real. Loneliness can bring people back. Loneliness can bring people back because emotional emptiness often makes the past appear more comforting than it really was. When people feel isolated, disconnected, or emotionally unsupported, they naturally begin remembering those who once made them feel seen, understood, or valued. The desire to escape loneliness can become stronger than the desire to move forward. This happens because the mind searches for familiar sources of comfort during difficult times. A person who has been alone for weeks or months may begin thinking about an old relationship, not because it was healthy, but because it was familiar. The memory of connection feels safer than the uncertainty of starting over with someone new. Loneliness also softens painful memories. The arguments, disappointments, and incompatibilities slowly fade, while the moments of laughter, affection, and companionship become more vivid. The past begins to look warmer than it truly was, making the idea of returning feel emotionally appealing. This can cause someone to reach out unexpectedly. A simple message, phone call, or attempt to reconnect may seem like proof that they have changed. In reality, they may simply be trying to escape the discomfort of being alone. Their return is driven by emotional need rather than genuine personal growth. The darker side is that relationships restarted because of loneliness often repeat the same unhealthy patterns. Once the feeling of isolation disappears, the original problems usually return because they were never truly resolved. The temporary relief is mistaken for lasting change. Real reconciliation requires growth, accountability, and a genuine desire to build something healthier than before. Loneliness alone cannot create those things. It can only create the feeling that returning is easier than facing the emptiness. Sometimes people come back because they truly value you. Other times, they come back because silence has become harder to live with than the relationship they once chose to leave. They may miss your comfort, not you. They may miss your comfort, not you, because people often confuse the emotional benefits of a relationship with the person who provided them. They remember feeling understood, supported, appreciated, or emotionally safe, and when those feelings disappear, they assume they are missing the relationship itself. In reality, they may be longing for the comfort it gave them, rather than the person they lost. This happens because the brain remembers emotional relief during difficult moments. If you were the one who listened after a stressful day, encouraged them when they doubted themselves, or made them feel less alone, those experiences become deeply connected to your presence. When life becomes difficult again, they naturally begin missing the emotional safety you once provided. The difference is important. Missing someone means appreciating who they are, including their personality, values, dreams, and individuality. Missing comfort often means craving the emotional support they received without necessarily valuing the relationship itself. They want the feeling back more than they want to truly know you again. This is why some people return during lonely or stressful periods. They suddenly reach out, not because they have reflected on the relationship or changed as a person, but because they miss the peace, stability, and reassurance they once found in your presence. The emotional need becomes stronger than the memory of why the relationship ended. The darker side is that returning for comfort rarely creates lasting change. Once life feels easier again, the same patterns often reappear because the underlying problems were never addressed. The relationship becomes a temporary refuge instead of a genuine fresh start. Real love is about valuing the person, not just the comfort they provide. Someone who truly misses you seeks to understand, appreciate, and grow with you. Someone who only misses the comfort is often trying to replace an emotional need, hoping your presence will once again make their inner emptiness feel temporarily quiet. People return when other attention disappears.